All right, good day, everybody. Definitely appreciate all of you for taking the time out of your day today on a Saturday to be able to spend some time over the next couple hours, just really getting a chance to understand more how the fire department testing process works. So I do want to thank all of you for the gift of your time, because I know there's a lot of other things going on in this world right now. Good, bad, indifferent, and a lot of stuff. But anyway, the focus right now is to really help all of you understand how to master the fire department testing process. Now, I don't want you to look at it like thinking it's a game. In some ways, some would call it a game, but it really isn't a game in my eyes. But it can be. I want you to take it seriously, but I also want to expose you to some of the most common things that are done around the country, just to give you an idea and a flavor. What goes on in California may go on in Oregon, may not go on in Utah, may go on in Illinois, may not go on in Florida. The point is, you've got to start out this whole process by really doing some homework and research. And the good news is, with the internet out there today, it's pretty easy to do a lot of research. So let's start off with that. If you haven't had a chance to watch last week's webinar, which was 25 reasons to hire you as a firefighter, that's also posted on my YouTube page, which I'll be sharing the link afterward, or you can just Google my name on YouTube. So 25 reasons to hire you as a firefighter was posted last weekend. So a lot of good nuggets on that one. Next Saturday, I'm doing another webinar as well too, Reach for the Firefighter Badge. A lot of good information, general information as well, that'll help tie in with this week's webinar as well as last week's. And then the last webinar in the series will be on Saturday, June 20th, and that'll be 21 key points to assist you in becoming a firefighter. Some similar information, but a lot of different information, and more importantly, a lot of redundant information to try to drive the point home. So I think there's honestly a lot of good value in each one of these webinars, just to hopefully wet your whistle and really get you maybe hopefully fired up and ready to go. So start out a little bit about myself. I started out, God, almost 30 years ago, time flies, as a fire explorer with the City of Alameda Fire Department, right across the bay from San Francisco. I then moved on as a student firefighter with the Oakland Fire Department. Student firefighter was basically a ride-along, which was a volunteer position. It was a work experience program through the Chabot College Fire Technology program, where I still teach part-time at. But it's a great way to be sort of the fifth person on an engine company and gain a lot of valuable experience. Not a lot of those programs out there nationwide. I mean, I'm fortunate to live in an area and have grown up in an area that had a lot of opportunities. But in all honesty, wherever you are around the country, there are opportunities. It's a matter of you making those opportunities work for you. So from there, I was able to get to my first paid position. Now, let me just step back for a little bit. You don't just automatically decide one day to become a firefighter and then all of a sudden just go down to your local fire department and say, hire me, bring me on. It doesn't usually work that way. A lot of time, energy, and effort goes into this process. And you don't get hired unless you start testing. And I just want to repeat that. You don't get hired unless you start testing. Very few get hired on their first test. I mean, it's rare. It does happen. You may run into people, oh yeah, I got hired on my first test. Hey, sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it's just timing. Sometimes, hey, the stars lined up and they had that perfect package to offer, but it's rare. Most people have to be at it for a number of years. I stuck with it for about 4.5 years before my first full-time career job, which I'll touch on in a second. But I was about 2.5 years, 2 years into my testing when I got hired with the Elk Grove Fire Department as a paid call firefighter, which is basically a minimum wage position. Yeah, minimum wage, zero benefits at the time. I mean, zero medical benefits. I was allowed to pay into the state retirement system, which I'm happy I did, because even though I paid into it and it made that $4.50 an hour go down to pretty much probably nothing, it was retirement system time that still benefits me to this day that I can still use with my current employer. So I say that because not everyone always thinks about finances or benefits. Those are the unsexy things. You've got to understand about finances and benefits, not just the pay, not just the schedule, but understand all the behind the scenes stuff, you know, benefits, retirement plans, because your career goes quick and you need to understand that stuff, because we try our best to educate you, but you're on your own, and a lot of people unfortunately don't prepare well. So I was happy to get a part-time job. It was a full-time job. I worked 48 hours a week, but it was basically part-time pay, but it was money and it was also experience on the resume. From there, I moved on to my current employer here in the Silicon Valley, about 45 minutes south of San Francisco, next to the city of San Jose. Got hired as a firefighter engineer paramedic almost about not 20 years ago. That was probably about 25 years ago. Time flies quick. I've been in the fire service 28 years. It goes fast. Did about 5 years as a firefighter, engineer, paramedic. From there, I stepped up, took the captain's test, was fortunate to get promoted to captain. So I did about 5 years as a captain on a fire engine and also in the office working in our training division for a short time. From there, I took the battalion chief's test, had to take it twice. You know, I was fortunate to get promoted the first time to captain. Not many people are. Battalion chief's test, had to take it a second time. That's the way it works. But I got promoted to battalion chief, did that position for about 5 or 6 years as well, mostly in the field, a little bit of time in the office managing our EMS division. And then from there, I got promoted to deputy chief back in 2011. So about 9 years ago, I became a deputy chief, longest position I've held, did 3 years in training, spent about 2 years as the admin deputy chief administration, and then I did about a year and a half as the operations deputy chief, and then now I've been 2 years back in the training chief position. So very fortunate to be involved with a lot of great things. It's about setting goals and doing what you can to meet those goals and realizing your career goes quick. Some other fortunate things I've been involved with, and I share this not to brag about myself. Part of it is to give you some background about myself if you didn't have a chance to watch any of the webinars previously. But my point is, most of my things I've been fortunate to do in my career have not come by accident or chance. Nothing's perfect. Nothing's ever 100% planned out. But when I was in your shoes, and I say your shoes, I'm assuming if you're watching this, you're someone that wants to become a career firefighter. And obviously the information works for volunteer positions too, but you probably want to be a career or someone that's paid. I get it. You have to have a plan in mind, not just for the next 5 years, but the next 10, 20, 30 years into retirement. And I know things change. Your path may not be the same as what it was when you started it, but you got to have a plan. And my plan's gone pretty well. It's not perfect. There's been a lot of, zigging and zagging and curveballs thrown at me like there is everybody else, but you've got to look at yourself now of what interests you now and how do you want to give back and leave the fire service better. And I think that's the focus also. Leave the fire service better than you found it and also give back, pay it forward. So I've been fortunate to be the author of 3 books, 2 of them on career preparation to become a firefighter, 1 on promotional preparation for those that are in the fire service wanting to get hired from captain all the way up to fire chief. And I'm also working on 2 more books as well too, one of them being on promotional preparation and another one on leadership that'll hopefully be out realistically probably by early next year if all goes well. So I'm very fortunate to do that. I mean, I love speaking and I love writing and I love being a firefighter. So all these things don't come by chance. All of you can be doing these things too. You may not think it, but back when I was in your shoes, I was thinking, hey, I want to be an instructor. Hey, I want to be an author. I want to do this just because I found interest and passion in those things. And I get bored easily too. So been fortunate to have over 200 articles published in all the major fire magazines, Fire Engineering, Firehouse, Fire Rescue, and a whole slew of them. Most of them are all posted on my website, which I'll share here shortly, code3firetraining.com, and Chabot Fire, the one I run for the college. A lot of them are just free. Well, most of them, they should all be free, but you should have access to them off my website. That a lot of good information to benefit you. I've been fortunate to be an instructor as pretty much my whole fire service career. I've had a hand in instructing, starting out with the EMT program at Chabot College. As soon as I graduated the EMT program, as I was barely in my process of becoming a firefighter, I was giving back as a volunteer skills instructor. That was a way to get some experience for the resume, and it led to a paid teaching gig at some point. And because I always wanted to teach as well too. So I've been fortunate to have teaching opportunities scheduled. I say scheduled because I had a lot of gigs planned this summertime and spring and fall that have been pushed into next year, but 33 states around the country I've been fortunate to have gigs scheduled or taught in, and even Canada. And besides entry-level preparation, I also my passion is also leadership, officer development for career fire departments, volunteer fire departments, and conferences. So very fortunate to go on the road and share my passion as well with others. I mentioned I teach at Chabot College in Hayward. I teach at the Firefighter 1 Academy, as well as I teach the Intro to Fire class. I'm also an adjunct faculty member at the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland, which is a dream come true because the NFA has a lot of great programs once you're on the job or in the career, and they're free, best of all, but a lot of good stuff back in Maryland. I've been an oral board rater and proctor for thousands of candidates of all ranks. I share that because if you're wondering what gives me the background or subject matter, and I hate to say expertise, but the background to be able to share this information with you, that's where a lot of it comes from, not just teaching at the college, but I've had a chance through the college seeing hundreds of students a year and having my fingers on helping a lot of people get hired as a firefighter as well as get promoted in all ranks, captain, battalion chief, division, and I've also helped a lot of fire chiefs get promoted just with my passion and sharing of information with them from my websites and meeting with them. I've also, as I said, mentored countless individuals to get hired, to get promoted. So that's pretty much my passion. And here was the 2 entry-level books that are on my website. I'm not trying to sell anything or hawk anything. Just feel free to check them out. If you find value in them, great. If you don't, no big deal. It's just resources for you. They're both distinctively different because I think there's a lot of, like I said, I have a lot of passion I love sharing with others. So really my objectives today, my goals today actually are hoping to, number one, inspire you. Inspiration comes from within. Motivation comes from within. I know some say that that person inspired me, that person motivated me, but in all reality, that could be true, but there has to be a connection. So my hope is to inspire you, inform you on certain things. Yes, some of the information may be second nature or stuff you've already heard. That's fine. Maybe you'll hear it differently from me because you could have 10 people at my rank from the same department all talking on the same subject with slightly different answers, or even if we're from different parts of the country, because things are slightly different on people's perception and even their experiences. So just, this is my perspective. I also hopefully plan to educate you. I want to encourage you to go down rabbit holes. What I mean that is, I had a student the other day reach out that says, hey, I want to go to the college here. I'm going to start the fire program at Chabot here in the fall. What do I need to do to get there? And I told him, we'll go to the website, chabotfire.com. We have a lot of free information there and a lot of good roadmaps of step 1, step 2, step 3. And he goes, okay, I read all that stuff. What else do I need to do? And this was like about a day or 2 after. And I'm thinking, you didn't really read all the stuff, because if you really read the stuff, it would have encouraged you to do a lot of other things, like go check out this link, go do that, check this link out, go read this article. I try to encourage you to be resourceful, because the badge will not fall out of the sky. I mean, I think some people think it's easy becoming a firefighter. Some people think it's difficult. I think it's a combination, but you've got to do your homework and research. So I want you to go down rabbit holes, start locally and then go regionally, statewide, nationally. There's a lot of information at your fingertips with the internet that a lot of people never had in the past. I want to share my passion, and hopefully that shows throughout as well. And I also, as I shared earlier, I want to pay it forward, and I hope you do the same. Now, you may be in the situation going, I'm not even on the job yet. How am I going to pay it forward? Well, you can be paying it forward right now in whatever situation you're in right now. And especially in the challenging times that we are in, all of us in some form or fashion can pay something forward, just like I'm doing now. I could have easily charged for these webinars. You may or may not have signed up or have been willing to pay for them. Okay, but I could have easily charged for them. But in looking at the situation right now, you know what? I'm fortunate to be in a position where I can do these free of charge, and I can accommodate the cost of hosting the webinars. And as long as I can do that, I want to share that information, just like on my websites. While I do sell certain things like certain books, and I do get paid to speak, I also share a ton of information off my website on the free stuff link. So again, there's a balance, and I want to hopefully share that with you, and hope you do the same. Because as soon as you get on the job, think about it. You're on the job today. Within about a month or 2, you could be senior to somebody else, meaning somebody could get hired right behind you about a month behind, or maybe a year behind, 2 years behind. That's your job, to take them under your wing with as little or as much as knowledge as you have. Now look at this picture here. That is a group of firefighters that are all raising their hand to take the oath of office. That's where they're getting hired. They're getting ready to go into the firehouses. They've finished their training, and that's the fire chief typically up there going, do you solemnly swear to, take this oath to follow the Constitution, blah, 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 do the right thing. And of course, everyone's like, yes, 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 I'll do that. Please don't ever forget that. That's almost like your oral interview day. Your oral interview, I mean, everyone seems to promise the world to the fire chief or the oral board of, I'll do this, I'll do that if you hire me. So many times people forget that for whatever reason. Don't ever forget your interview of what you promised the panel, because you know what? They're not going to forget it, and they may hold you accountable at some point. So remember that oath of office, because it's not easy. It's not easier doing the job of a firefighter or a public servant in general. Look at what law enforcement is having to deal with right now, and not just the stuff going on today with the protests. Just look at how tough it is being a law enforcement professional around the country. A lot of people look at firefighters the same way. We look the same, short of the uniform looks the same, short of the words maybe fire on our badge or maybe on our patch, even though we drive typically different rigs. There are some people that lump us together, and it is challenging being a public servant because we are in that public eye. So take that oath of office for the right reasons. Now, I like to start out presentations with this piece of paper here, and I don't mean to make this seem like a dig. I know there's a lot of people that'll really point the fingers, maybe at certain generations, about that generation's entitled. I disagree with a specific generation because I believe all generations have some sense of entitlement. Don't believe me? Go on the internet, go on social media, and you'll see people of all age brackets that are showing some type of entitlement. Just the world we live in. So try not to let that be you, but also more importantly, you're starting with a blank sheet of paper. Hopefully you're taking good notes. Obviously, like I said, I'll share this webinar afterward. If it turns out okay, I'll post it on YouTube, so it'll be there in perpetuity, as they say. But take some good notes so you can at least hopefully think of things. I'm not going to do interactive Q&A because I think it screws the flow up. But that said, if you have questions that come along during the presentation, please jot them down. And at the very end, I'll leave some time for Q&A. So I will do that. And then obviously I'll share my contact information. So when things pop up later on today, tomorrow, next week, feel free to text me, call me, email me, and I'll be more than happy to share that information with you as well too. So you got to realize by now it hopefully takes a village to get us where we need to go. So I want to share my websites. I mentioned the two websites I run. My personal website is code3firetraining.com, which is my personal website, which has a lot of promotional preparation, officer development, leadership, training stuff for people that are on the job. And it links you to my website, ChabotFire.com, where I teach for the Chabot College's fire technology program. And I also run their website. They both have free stuff links, and they both have a lot of free information for all ranks of people. So I encourage you to check those out. And really, you could spend hours there learning more about becoming a firefighter and hopefully inspiring you to go check that website out or go do that or go do this. There is no one way to become a firefighter. I just want you to remember that. Now, objectives of this session, I want to hopefully expose you to the most common phases of the fire service hiring process. We'll talk about that. I want you to be able to identify various mistakes to avoid during the fire service hiring process. And also, I want you to be able to identify various key points for success in the fire service hiring process. We'll talk about a lot of these things as we're talking about each and every week. So what I encourage everybody is you're never going to get hired unless you take a test. And you may go, how do I find out about tests? We'll talk about that shortly if you're not familiar with how to do that. But this is a common question. When I teach the fire academy students at the college oral interview techniques, and sort of what we're talking about today, that's pretty much the one class I focus on is oral interview techniques. For someone to get to the fire academy at Chabot College, they pretty much have had to be at the college for about a year to maybe a year and a half, give or take, because they first have to have certain prerequisites to get into the academy. So most of the academy students have been at it for maybe 6 months to a year and a half or more to get in the academy. So think about that. These are not, I want to be a firefighter. They've already made that decision to become a firefighter because they took the necessary prerequisite classes. And before you say, why all the prerequisites? Well, the prerequisites are there because we were losing a lot of candidates because they were not prepared. So the prerequisites are there to hopefully help people, set people up for success. So don't get offended by prerequisites when you see them. They're actually there for you. Now, they may not be you personally, but most students need the prerequisites. So don't get wrapped around the axle. If it's easier for you without them, just deal with it. But the point I'm making is take every test you qualify for. So I mentioned back, by the time that I became a fire explorer with the city of Alameda, I had already taken some tests. Now, at the time, most departments in the San Francisco Bay Area just required you to be 18 years old, have a high school diploma or a GED. Very few required EMT and very few required paramedic license or even Firefighter 1 Academy certification. So there was a few departments where I could apply for, which I did, and I'm glad I did. I mean, City of San Jose came out in the top 50 out of thousands of applicants based on my first oral interview. I mean, like, oh, well, heck, I mean, sounds pretty good, 50 out of a couple thousand. Well, didn't get hired, but it was a good experience to go through because it exposed me to the process. Well, I asked this question of students. So I love going into the room and saying, all right, how long have you guys been in the, firefighting mode? And most of them usually say a year or more, because they've made the decision to dedicate their life and to go for it. I mean, dedicate your life and go for it means you're going to go to EMT school. You're going to maybe take some college classes. You don't have to, but it doesn't hurt. You're focusing on this. This is your career path. You don't just do that overnight. Well, I usually say, how many of you have actually taken a test? And the sad part is, typically 20 to 30 students in the academy, most of them at least a year in the process. I get maybe 3, 4, 5 people that raise their hands like, yeah, chief, I've taken some tests. And my usual answer is, okay, how many tests have you taken? 10, 20, 30. And usually it's like, well, I took one test. Okay, tell me what department. Did you get an oral interview? Did you get a chief's interview? Well, I took Oakland's test. Perfect, how'd you do? Well, I didn't pass the written, which you usually have to have 70% for. Okay, and then they feel so down and dejected. It's like, but the good part about that is failure is okay, because you saw the test. That same test will probably be used in other jurisdictions. And if you're at this long enough, you'll see the same test being maybe offered here, then here, and you maybe tank it the first time. But if you're smart enough to realize, ooh, I wasn't too good at math or English or reading comprehension or map reading or mechanical ability, the typical things that you'll find on a written examination. Well, there's books out there, ask some questions, get some resources, then maybe you'll pass the next test to get to the next phase. But I asked the question of the other, at least the few people that raise their hands said they're testing, I'm happy for them. And I usually try to find out, hey, how have you done? Some of them got to the oral interview, but for the other 90%, I put them on the spot and I go, why have you not tested yet? And you can only imagine what the answers are. I mean, there's all the hem and haw, and it's no different. The same normal responses I get from people are, I'm not ready, chief. Okay, and my response is, what are you waiting for? What's going to make you ready? And of course, the typical comeback is, well, I got to wait till the academy ends. And mind you, they've already had their EMT, meaning they can apply for a lot of tests. So I go, okay, so in a week, 3 weeks, you're graduating the academy. You'll have your Firefighter 1 academy as well as your EMT. And then, of course, are you going to automatically start testing? Because those open up more doors in a lot of areas. And then, of course, well, no. Okay, when do you think you're going to be ready? Well, I got to go to paramedic school, or I got to wait till my degree is finished. If you have that type of attitude where you're not even going to apply for a job until you're ready, newsflash, life is passing you by, because some departments only test once every few years. Look at the current situation right now. As tragic as this coronavirus situation is, it's just as tragic, and I don't want to downplay it by any means, so don't take it that way. It's just as devastating to city, county, state, federal budgets. I mean, cities, counties, states, and budgets and federal budgets are hurting because of all the money being expended for so many reasons, which means in some departments, they may not be hiring a lot of people. They still have retirements, obviously, to fill, but there are a lot of departments, and I don't know of any city that's not hurting because of this right now. So the point is, if you don't take that test today that, say, the San Francisco Fire Department is hosting maybe like this month, and they're not, so please don't call them up or bug them and say, Steve said you're testing. If you don't take this one test today, there's a good chance that they may not test for a number of years. Most departments usually test, meaning they accept applications so you can compete for the process to get hired. Most departments do that every couple of years. Well, when there's tough economic times like now or back 12 years ago when it was the 2008 till about 2011 economic downturn, there was a lot of cities that were going 5, 6, 7, 8 years in between testing, meaning if you don't take the test today, you're not going to have another chance till 8 years later. Cleveland, Ohio, I mentioned this a lot. Cleveland, Ohio was about 15 years ago, because of their economic challenges, which probably haven't gotten any better, like most big cities in the Midwest. They were using an 11-year-old list to hire people off 11-year-old list. And that's not uncommon because it's expensive to run a test, host a test. So that's why it's important to take every test you qualify for. Now, some might say, well, don't spread yourself so thin, focus on the few departments that you want to work for. That's, to me, is a long-term strategy that you deal with after you've got this process dialed. Meaning, if you can't even pass a written test, then you better start taking more tests just to be able to pass a written test, because most of them use the same test. Okay, if you can't even pass a physical ability test or pass the CPAT or whatever the physical ability test is, you better keep doing it again. If you can't smoke the oral interviews with, not, and I say smoke, 90% or 80%, just like your writtens, 90s or 80s, 70s aren't good enough, even 80s aren't good enough, you better take more tests. It's practice. That's why I say mastering the testing process is a lot about practice. And really, short of the money you spend for maybe driving to an interview or driving to take a test or driving to visit the firehouses, yeah, that's money spent. I get that. Few departments sometimes make you pay to apply, which I get it. In the tough economic times, some departments are forcing the money to go back on the candidates because they can't afford it. I get that. But in some ways, it's not a lot of money invested, but you got to take the test. You'll never get hired. I mean, what's the worst they could do? I love telling people this. What's the worst they could do? Give you a job, or even worse, God forbid, reject you. Oh my God, the rejection. You know what? I want you to fail a written test. I want you to fail an oral interview. I want you to fail something because you've been, sorry, I'm not mean. I want you to be exposed to these things because you'll probably, hopefully, make you want it even better. And that way you can start doing more homework and research to find out how to pass it the next time, because they're not that drastically different. So take your tests. We can talk more about that later. Now, some people may say, well, how do I find out who's testing? Well, there's a number of resources out there. Obviously, word of mouth is okay, but you can't rely on word of mouth because, depending on your circle of people, you're probably not going to get that information. And everything now is so timely with information flow. Yeah, research works. I mean, you can go Google Denver Fire Department if you want to work for Denver or the city of Denver, or how to become a Denver firefighter. You can do that. I get that. But if you haven't figured out by now, there's a lot of departments, a lot of cities that their websites are out of date. I mean, not just out of date by a month or a week, but by years. I mean, it's a good way to start. I mean, you can also pick up the phone, try to call up the city of Denver, say, hey, when you testing next for firefighter? I mean, that's one way to do it. Like I used to have to do it. Obviously, the internet's a resource. Some of the best money spent, though, is for testing notification services. And you got to spend money to make money. And I don't own this company. I know the owner of the company, great guy. I used to subscribe to the service back in the day when I was testing 30 years ago, before the internet. It used to be a little yellow postcard that used to come in the mail. And I remember you'd get this postcard, a couple times a week, maybe once a week, whenever departments were testing. And it'd be sometimes maybe one department, two departments, or maybe get a bonanza of like 5 departments listed. It's like, and these are around the United States. And I'm like, oh great, Los Angeles is testing, they're accepting applications. Oh, San Diego's testing, Portland, Oregon. And it was sort of cool to get that yellow postcard. I mean, you talk to people that have been around, they sort of love that. Well, if I didn't get that postcard, how would I have found out about that test? Because newspapers back then, employers used to put ads in the newspapers. Now, some of you may go, newspaper, what's that? Yeah, as a majority of the United States population, newspapers are almost extinct. So most departments don't use that. Some departments may use like Monster or other, job type of resources on the internet. But sometimes, to me, the best thing is to pay for a testing notification service. Now, the problem with these yellow cards, again, they're great, they're cool, but you know how the U.S. Postal Service works. They do the best. I'm not slamming them. They do the best they can with what they got. But if San Francisco announced a test, and now I'm getting this yellow card, and they said the first 100 applications are being accepted, that's it, 100, which is, some departments do that today because they don't want thousands. Well, depending on where I live around the country, and if my mail comes at 5 o'clock versus your mail at 1 o'clock, or your mail the day before at 3 o'clock, it was not consistent. Now, the best part about these services is that internet-based, where they'll send you sometimes either text messages if you sign up for that, or Facebook posts, or emails, or however you set up and however they offer it. But it's good money well spent to find out of who's testing. Go check out website. I think firecareers.com is the best. I still pay for that service, not because I want to leave my current employer, but I want to see what's out there. Number one, because I enjoy sharing information when I can, but you also can't rely on me. Just like students at the college, like, hey, chief, who's testing? It's like, hey, if I know information, I share it every week when I'm in school, but I'm not your testing. I'm not your notification system. You pay good money, but they do the research, so you don't have to. So enough said. Again, I don't get anything by selling it. I just think it's a good service. That's why I'm sharing this as informational. There's also other companies. Now, If you're in California, for example, or you want to work for a California department, fctconline.org. I would encourage you to check out FCTC, Fire Candidate Training Center. A lot of departments, they offer a written test, a statewide written test. They also offer CPAT testing. For those who use CPAT, Candidate Physical Ability Test is a physical fitness test that is used not just in California, but nationwide. The good thing in California, it's such a big state, FCTC has 4 facilities, 2 up north, 2 down south, where they have CPAT tests they offer on a regular schedule. You go to the website, you can book a CPAT test, practice session, real session, and they also have written tests. My department actually used FCTC this last testing process for the written test, meaning if you didn't take their written test, you couldn't apply for our department, as many other departments around California. So you can't just say, well, hey, I want to work for your department. Well, you got to first find their test and take their test and pass their test, and then from there. So it's one way to get yourself access to probably hundreds of different fire departments. Some departments use FCTC. You can go to the website and see all the departments. It's a small fee to access it because departments push the feedback on the candidate, but it's money well spent because now instead of one department, you can access many departments. National Testing Network is just that. We used to use National Testing Network, but they're nationwide. Last time I looked on their website is you can apply, like let's say when we were using it, or other departments like San Francisco uses or was using National Testing Network, a lot of other cities. If you were applying to test for that department today because they're accepting applications, you would pay like the $40 what the fee was. There's fee waivers if you have financial hardships, which you can apply for, but you'd pay your access fee for that one department. So then that department, say Long Beach, California, they would have access because you took the test and paid the fee. But the good part is when you go to the website, there's probably 400 plus fire departments nationwide that access that list. Now, some departments may not use that list every time, but they may use it every other time, just like some departments may not use the FCTC list. But there are similar things like this around the country. Denver has a regional program where there's like anywhere from 10 to 20 fire departments around the Denver area, where typically they have once a year a test where you take one test and now you have access to all these different departments. For the departments, it's beneficial, and for the candidates, beneficial because you're not making 20 trips to Denver. So these are just a couple of the different companies out there. And again, yeah, you're gonna have to pay money, but it's access to the department. It's the only way to work for certain departments. So check them out. Again, I don't get any money and I'm not getting any credit or bonus for helping them out. I think they're good for candidates because it's good. When I was testing, it was nice to have a network where I could take one test and be now able to be hired by up to 20 departments. All right, what does it take to be a firefighter? Touched on a lot of these things on last week's webinar, 25 reasons to hire you as a firefighter, as well as the next few weeks, but we're not hiring resumes, we hire people. We're hiring good quality people with good character traits. We want good positive characteristics. And you don't believe me? Look at law enforcement. You know, there's a lot of tragic things going on right now in today's world, and we look at the tragic events that have happened in Minneapolis just the last couple of days. You know, and I know it's very easy, and I don't want to make this a political statement, but it's very easy to maybe say, well, all cops are bad, you know. Well, that's like saying all whatever are bad. You know, in any line of work, pretty much, or anything of anything, probably 90% plus of any group of folks, 90, 95, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, are all good, solid individuals. But like with anything, usually 5%, give or take, hopefully less, there's bad apples in everything. Professional sports, government, private companies. And you look at law enforcement agencies, and I know a lot of people want to, you know, bag on the law enforcement agencies of like, you know, they should hire better people. Well, yeah, if you're a police chief, you don't want to hire someone that's going to put you on the national news for some things like that. Now you have to also fire them, and then the bad name that goes along with that, plus all the tragedy that now strikes your city from the protests. That's a whole other issue. And again, if that police chief had a choice, I bet you even though probably wasn't him that hired the guy, because the guy has been on for whatever, 20 years, obviously was a police chief that probably 5 police chiefs ago. Police chief's no different from a fire chief, no different from any other department head that's making hiring choices. They want to hire good people that are going to serve the community and hopefully be on the job for 20, 30 years, doing the right thing for the right reasons, serving the public, you know, positive public relations, not getting in trouble. I get it. So there's a reason why departments do background psychological evaluations that we'll touch on in a little bit. But again, even those aren't foolproof. I mean, even those do not pick out everything. And I hate to say it, but law enforcement, it's probably very easy to be a law enforcement officer. I don't mean this in a negative way. It is probably easy because they don't get a lot of applicants. You talk to most police departments and police officers, they get so few applicants, especially applicants that can pass the background, pass the psych, and it's very tough. Now, fire, we're fortunate in fire, most parts of the country, that most people still want to be firefighters. Yeah, how many people want to become a cop? And that sucks because I have a criminal justice degree. I respect what cops do. I have a lot of friends that are police officers. I don't want to do their job. I could not do their job. It's a thankless position. So I respect at least the good ones that are trying to do the right thing. But getting back to that, fire at least has more people wanting to become firefighters, but being a public servant in today's world sometimes it's tough to get good applicants that can pass the background, pass the psych. So, think back, we're hiring good quality people, or at least that's what we should. You got to have the minimum qualifications, which are usually minimal at best. And also, I'll talk about maybe desirable or highly desirable qualifications. Most departments, the minimum qualifications around the country are 18 years old, high school diploma. Some departments may require EMT or paramedic or maybe a firefighter academy at a college. Very few will require a degree because the more requirements you have, all you're doing is wiping down your applicant pool. And in departments today, the goal is not to have an applicant pool of this big, or that small. The goal is to have a huge applicant pool so you can hopefully pick the best people that'll serve the community and understand civil service and being a community servant. Well, that's why the more requirements you have, the less applicants. Now, smaller departments may do that. Now, if you're a smaller department, when I say smaller, 1 fire station, 2 fire stations, 3 fire stations, nothing wrong with that. Most of the country is probably smaller departments. You probably only hire 1 person or 2 people every year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, there's probably not a lot of hiring or promotions. So I can see a lot of smaller departments, they may require more things like EMT or paramedic or even college academy or your state firefighter 1 because they don't have the money, the time, and the energy to put you through that training. They're gonna, hey, here's the badge. You're on the fire engine starting tomorrow. Good luck, and here's your captain. Do the right thing, don't screw it up. I mean, that's small departments. Most big departments obviously will put you through a recruit academy. So don't get discouraged when you see departments that say desirable or highly desirable qualifications. I remember when I was testing in the 90s, and it seems like it was yesterday, but I know I'm old. A lot of departments in the San Francisco Bay Area, the highly desirable thing at the time was paramedic because a lot of departments were still EMT and they were focusing on becoming paramedic. Well, city of San Jose, where I now live, they used to have highly desirable Spanish speaking, or not just Spanish speaking, but other non-English languages. And not necessarily fluent, but there was actually a separate test that if you could pass, they'd like have a separate oral board. From what I understand, they would ask you questions, say in Spanish or other languages. And if you did pass that language, certain fire engines around the city were set up as sort of like a bilingual unit. I mean, 1 person would be that Spanish speaking person or Chinese or Japanese or whatever language there, because the cities, like most big cities, are very diverse. And San Jose used to have highly desirable, and they used to have like a 5% pay differential to be able to offer a candidate. So don't get discouraged. I mean, maybe it's an avenue to get in if you don't speak a second language, and there is that rarity of a department, especially you would see this usually in big city fire departments. Yeah, maybe that's one way. You may not be fluent, but you better be able to pass a test. So don't let those discourage you. Just if you see desirable or highly desirable, shoot for them. Let's go back a couple slides. I'm not going to do it, but think back a couple slides ago. I mentioned you got to find out who's testing. The good part about finding out who's testing, whether you pay for a service or you Google it and you find out, hey, the city of Rochester, New York is testing, or Philadelphia is testing, or whatever city is testing. Start looking at their qualifications because you're going to see a lot of commonalities. So if you want to maybe work in a different state, let's say you live in Oregon, but you want to move to Idaho for whatever reason. Okay, great. Well, the requirements may be different from what you're used to in Oregon. So start looking at Idaho departments. What is Boise looking for? What's Pocatello looking for? And realize if some states may not have a lot of paid departments. You go to a lot of states, I mean, there's not a lot of paid fire departments. I mean, most states, I mean, volunteers still protect most of the United States. I mean, obviously not the big cities and the suburban areas, but Bay Area is mostly career fire departments. You go outside back east, get outside Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, big cities out in Pennsylvania, get outside Washington, D.C., Baltimore. A lot of those departments are all volunteer. I mean, seriously, that's not a bad thing. It works for those organizations. So the point is, start looking for minimum qualifications, and if you want to go somewhere, try to figure out what does it take to be a firefighter in that jurisdiction or that maybe regional area, because I bet you if one department in that area is asking for that, so is the next department. So set yourself up for success by doing some research. You're going to have to make sacrifices. Some of those sacrifices may be monetarily sacrifices. When I say monetarily is, if you're working full time, you may not have a lot of time to take tests. You don't want to call in sick to go take an oral interview with, my dream department. Well, don't call in sick, because that may come up on your background investigation. That may go against you because you call in sick a lot. Don't do that. But hopefully you have a flexible enough position at your employer to be able to take the day off or take some time off to go to a test, because you may have to go take a written test here. Maybe you'll find it online, maybe not. You'll have to do an oral interview in person somewhere. You're going to have to make sacrifices. It's also sacrifices not just monetarily, but family and friends, for example. So family and friends, I mean, if you're a very social person, it could be very tough because you may have to spend a lot of time, maybe it's your schooling, maybe it's your researching, it's something else. But I look at it this way. These are sacrifices that'll pay off dividends in the end. Fortunate to be in the fire service for almost 28 years now, plus actually. Wouldn't change it for anything. Wasn't easy, it took me 4.5 years, but I wouldn't give it up for anything. The job has changed, the job will continue to change, the expectations, how the public views us. Funding is not getting better in any community for the most part, so we're gonna have to try to do less with less or different with less. I hate more with less because you can't do more with less, but you can do different with less. But anyway, I get it, the money is not there. I mean, especially now where tax revenues are drying up and it's expensive to run a city, run a business, whatever. But anyway, you need to think about this long-term, make some sacrifices. So, because here's the thing, especially if you're already married or have a significant other or even have kids, it may be even tougher. This is the time to sit them down and say, listen, this is my chance. And don't think because, well, I'm 30 years old, I'm too old, or maybe I'm 40, I'm too old. I hear people say that. Most departments today don't have maximum age requirements. Most don't. Most of them just say a minimum of 18 years old. Some do 21, but most of them are 18. Some departments back east have like 31 or 30 or 35 as the maximum age. It's not discriminatory, it's just because of the retirement system and a whole number of other factors that we don't have time to get into. But most departments, as long as you're able to pass every part of the process that I'll talk about today, you can get hired. But the point is, you're going to make sacrifices because this could be time away from your family. So now is the time to sit them down if you have significant others, family members, and say, listen, you may not see a lot of me in the next few years, especially if you've got to go to EMT school, paramedic school, go to the academy. That's time spent away from your family and your friends. But the point is, the 4.5 years I spent into becoming a firefighter, they pay off in the long run. As long as you're going to find the true status of your family and friends, because if they can put up with you for a few years of doing this, they're keepers. The problem is in paramedic school, I probably saw more divorces and relationship breakups in the 1.5 years of paramedic school than I saw in anything else because of the stress level of going through paramedic school. It was tougher than 4 years of college for me because I was spending so much time having to study paramedicine. And that's for a reason, because it's important. But it's tough on relationships. I'm glad I was single, but those that were able to have good, solid relationships stuck it out. Those are keepers. So you're gonna have to make some sacrifices. Typical hiring process. We talked about locating fire service positions. I saw Matt pop up a question on the chat, and I appreciate that. And as I mentioned earlier, I'll try to get the questions at the end as we go. If I don't get them as we go along there, so I'll definitely be happy to stay along there. And anyone else, if they have anything to share, please pipe in your feedback there. No stupid question. I encourage you, besides locating positions, review the job announcement. If you were to Google right now, firefighter employment, I'll use one example. Los Angeles Fire Department. They've got, I don't know, 4,000 firefighters of all ranks in that department. They're testing right now. Go to their website, lafd.org, or just Google become a Los Angeles firefighter. if you've never seen a job announcement or read through a process, you got to do it just to see what you're getting into. So review the job announcement. That's what's going on. Step one, it tells you how to become a firefighter or how to apply to become a firefighter. Well, yeah, they're going to get thousands of applicants. They'll probably still hire a few hundred, but review the job announcement, look for certain specific things. If you're not aware of certain things or don't understand certain things, ask people a question. You may not want to work for LA. You may be all the way across the country, but you know what? Review the announcement for Los Angeles Fire, because maybe it'll hopefully encourage, inspire, motivate you for other ones. Meet the requirements. Again, like I shared earlier, if most departments are 18 years old, high school diploma or GED, and that's about it. Now, you'll still see a lot of departments require EMT, sometimes paramedic, especially smaller departments because they can't afford to put you to paramedic school. But I'm hearing grumblings around the Bay Area where even though there's a lot of departments that require EMT or paramedic, because of the lack of applicants and the lack of quality applicants, some departments may be putting people through EMT school like we used to do years ago. I remember some departments, you know, I mean, that's about 4 to 5 months extra. Well, could be 3 months, but could be 3 to 5 months extra for a department. So when a department hires you, they put you through a recruit academy, anywhere from a couple months to maybe 4 months. Adding EMT is adding maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months. Obviously, if they put you to paramedic school, there's another year, give or take. It's a lot of money to do that. But in some departments, they're willing to do that, especially if they need to meet the needs of their community, whether it's diversity requirements or whatever. So don't be surprised, but don't wait for them to put you through EMT school or paramedic school. Certain things like that, I think, are good to have because obviously you'll be better prepared for the job you're getting into. And more importantly, a lot of departments require those things. Now the hardest part, applying. So many people, as I talk to students at the college, it's like, you know, why did you not apply for any positions? Of course, I mentioned, I'm not ready. My answer, you'll never be ready with that attitude. Apply for the damn position. What's the worst that can happen? They say no. Okay, so what? I took the city of San Jose's test 4 times in 4.5 years. Yeah, 4 times, 4.5 years. First test, as I mentioned earlier, I came out in the top 50. Now took the test the next year because they hired 2 groups of people off there. I think about 30 people to one academy of like 23, another one of about 8. Tested again. So I took the test the next year. You know, can't remember how I did in the second one. Then guess what? Hired some people off that one, tested again. I took that darn test 4 years and 4.5 years. A lot of people wouldn't be that persistent or tenacious. I'm like, I want to become a firefighter. You know, so San Jose, think about the odds here. When I was in my current department's academy, 4.5 years in this process, I got a call from San Jose, and luck would have it. And this is what you may hear from some people is that when it rains, it pours. I get my job offer, I'm in the academy, and I remember checking at the time, cell phones were not that prevalent, but I did have a cell phone. I remember checking my messages. I left the thing in the car. Don't take the phone with you to the academy. But the phone was in the car, and I go, oh, what's that number? And hi, this is so-and-so with the San Jose Fire Department. Now, mind you, I'm with my current employer in the recruit academy, you know, halfway through it. So I've already got a job, just need to finish the academy, pass probation. And here's, hi, City of San Jose Fire wants to finally offer you a job. You know, we see you've tested with us like 4 times, and we have a spot in our academy starting whatever 3 months from now. Would you like to go through background psychological evaluation? I'm like, where were you guys 3 months ago? But hey, timing is everything. And I would have taken a job with them if they had been the first one, but I'm like, you know what? The first employer that gives me the first full-time job, I'm yours. And that was my attitude. But I called them back kindly, and because you never want to burn any bridges. Hey, thank you very much for the offer. I appreciate that. Thank you. You know, please give the opportunity to somebody else. And then of course they're bummed because, I mean, not because of me personally, but when they're extending an offer to you, obviously they want you, you and a bunch of others typically. And now they got to go back to the well and try to grab some more people, which thankfully there's hopefully a good amount of people to pick from. But anyway, that was common. I did get a lot of other job offers, but I was happy where I'm at. So you got to apply. What's the worst that can happen? And if they give you a job, take the darn job. Don't be the one, I don't want to work for that department. I mean, I bet you there's many people in the last few months that are unemployed right now, looking for work, laid off, furloughed, that would probably love to take any job. So, and I don't mean to say that in a negative way or a condescending way or whatever, but you know what? It's tough to get a job. And whether you're a firefighter in that department or this department, whatever state, you're still a firefighter. I used to think I had to work for the big dogs, like FDNY, New York, or Los Angeles, or San Francisco, or Boston, all good departments, all good people, all good places. I thought I had to work at those departments to be able to have, credibility now behind my name, especially if I wanted to write articles or speak at conferences or speak as I'm doing now. I realized over the years, just because you work for a big department doesn't mean that you automatically have credibility. Credibility comes from you. I mean, just because you work for that department doesn't make you any better from any other department. Nothing personal. It's just we're all firefighters. And I think that's the key is you can still be called firefighter, whether you're on a one-person engine company, a four-person engine company, work for Sacramento, work for Fresno, work for Tucson, you're a firefighter. I think that's where the pride should come from. Follow the instructions because that's an easy way to get disqualified. So that's why it's critical to follow instructions. Do what it takes to follow instructions. I'll just leave it at that. Most departments, as we're going through the process, usually have a written examination that I touched on earlier, usually a 100-question multiple choice test, math, English, reading comprehension, mechanical ability, stuff like that to test your knowledge of basic stuff to become a firefighter. Now, think back to the minimum requirements. If a department does not, I repeat, does not require you to have EMT, does not require you to have paramedic or anything else, which most departments don't, and they only say 18 years old, high school diploma, then they can't test you on job-related stuff that's not required. Meaning, if you're not a paramedic, they didn't require paramedicine, they can't test you on paramedic stuff because that would be unfair. So that's why most departments usually use a standardized written test of math, English, reading comprehension, mechanical ability, stuff like that that you should have learned in school. Basic stuff that your high school diploma or GED should have covered. So written examination, usually 70% pass, but don't be happy with 70. Strive for the 90s. And I say that because some departments will not let you go to the next step, which is usually the physical ability test or the oral interview, unless you've got at least a 70% score. Or guess what? If everyone that takes the written passes, it's not uncommon to say departments, the fine print that says, yes, you have to pass with 70% to go to the next step, the oral interview will say, but you have to have, or they'll say only the highest ranking scores, meaning it could be 95 and above, you go 95 and above. Yeah, you could have a ton of people with 95% and higher on the written test. Wow. And you got 93, don't pat yourself on the back yet too hard because you may not even go to the next step. So written examination is good. And again, why I say master the testing process is you don't know what you don't know until you get out there. So take the test, now you see what's out there. Most of them don't change. Some departments, if they require paramedic or EMT, or sometimes firefighter one, meaning you've had to get your firefighter one through a college or another department or being a volunteer, I have seen some departments actually have a skills assessment. Like for EMT, a skills assessment could be basic EMT skills. For those of you that have your EMT, think about the basic National Registry skills, or paramedic, patient assessment, airway management, bleeding control, setting up a defibrillator, basic stuff that you had to have successfully passed to get your EMT or your paramedic. Some departments actually will throw you a little EMT's test if they require it, and or a paramedic skills assessment, because you may think that's easy stuff. In my experience, I bet you probably 50% of people fail the paramedic or the EMT skills assessments. Why? Because, and there was nothing tricky because they will send you those sheets in advance of, a month in advance. Hey, you're going to the next step, the skills assessment. Here's the National Registry skills sheet for patient assessment, for airway management. This is what you'll be tested on. There's no tricks. They give you the score sheets, the same ones you should have had in EMT or paramedic school. And because for whatever reason people can't remember, or they don't want to remember, or they maybe have their own style that doesn't work, they can't pass the test. You don't go any farther. So skills assessment is out there, especially for EMS related stuff. I've seen a few fire departments do it when they require firefighter one. They may do a skills assessment. I realize these are usually smaller departments that want to hire the best of the best. They don't have time to put you through an academy. They need you turnkey condition. And the skills assessment, if they require a firefighter one, meaning you've gone through an academy, is typically throw a 24-foot ladder, maybe pull a pre-connected hose line, don an SCBA. Again, all things you should have had as part of your previous firefighter one training, that was a requirement. But Most departments don't do that, but be aware of that, that you could be on the hook for that. Physical ability test. Some departments require a candidate to have a CPAT card, and the CPAT card that you get from going to a CPAT facility, there is no date on it. Well, there's a date of when you took it. Some departments say it's good for 6 months. Some say it's good for a year. Usually a year is the max, meaning you go take the test today. Now you can send that to certain departments and say, hey, I've got my CPAT. I've got my CPAT. Well, some departments only say 6 months because if you don't have a good workout plan in place, that CPAT that you passed one moment in time, say on January 1st, you're out of shape by January 20th because you haven't been keeping in shape. 6 months from now, let alone a year from now, is going to be pretty much disastrous. So CPAT is usually good. I would say every 6 months, try to keep your CPAT up. If they don't require a CPAT facility, I would encourage you to still find it because a lot of departments still require it, meaning you take it not there, they don't offer it. You've got to find a place. Like in California, I mentioned the FCTC online.com, they offer it. And I can't speak for every state. I know some states have CPAT facilities, but try to find out. And again, go to the website for the department you want to work at. Go to whatever fire department's website, become a firefighter, Google that stuff. You'll start seeing some information about how to become a firefighter and how they're doing things. You'll see some similarities and dissimilarities and things that are different. Most departments, if they do anything besides filing an application, most departments will have an oral interview. And that's probably the most scariest part for anybody because studies have shown that more people are scared of dying, repeat, scared of dying than they are public speaking. And I used to be that way. I used to be scared of public speaking. Now I can easily speak in front of groups. For whatever reason, I got over it, but I know a lot of people are scared of public speaking. Well, guess what you're doing on an oral interview? You've got 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, maybe 5 in front of you. I've had as little as 2 and as many as 7 on an oral interview for entry-level firefighter. And they're all staring at you. They're all waiting for your every word. They're all eyeing you down. That's intimidating and very nervous. Well, you got to be good at public speaking because you're selling yourself. And in most departments, that oral interview is 100% of your score, meaning you had to pass the written test. That doesn't factor into your final score. Pass the physical ability test and the skills maybe. Most departments, the oral interview is 100% of your final ranking, meaning if you smoke that oral interview and come out number 1, let's say they're interviewing, like our department recently interviewed like 150 candidates, give or take, or actually a little more than that with EMT and paramedic. Well, there's going to be a number 1, a number 2, a number 3, a number 4, and that's usually how the chief hires. It depends on the department. Some departments do straight down the list. Some departments, whether you're 100% or 70%, you're the same. Some departments have what's called rule of the list, meaning I'm number 5,020 at 70%, the last person before failing. You're number 1 with 100%. You and I are equal. Whether you got 100 and I got 70%, that's very common in big cities because that allows the fire chief to pick and choose really what they're looking for. But again, there's different things. Those are called civil service rules, rule of the list or rule of 3. We have what's called rule of 3, where if we have 3 people on a list, the fire chief, if he wants to hire 1, has to interview the top 3. He'll usually go with the number 1 candidate. I mean, unless there's some reason not to, but he has to give interviews to the first 3. That's rule of 3. Some departments do rule of 5, rule of 10, meaning 1 position, they got to interview the top 10 people. So don't, again, break your arm patting yourself on the back thinking, hey, I got an interview. Well, yeah, you and how many others. So do well in your interview, but you got to do that just to get to the next step. Some departments, the next step may be the chief's interview. This is across the board, whereas an oral interview usually be captains, lieutenants, firefighters, maybe engineers that are grading you, people that you'll probably work with at the firehouse. The chief's interview is a 2nd level interview. Like in our department, we recently interviewed, I think, about 150, 160 people. Well, from there, if we're going to hire, say, 10 people with rule of 3, well, if you do the math, the chief is going to not interview 10. The chief's going to interview a little bit more than that per our rules, knowing that sometimes people back out for whatever reason, or maybe they get hired by other departments during the process. Because if you're that good to make it to a top level of a department's interview hiring process, you're probably doing well in other departments. It's probably not a fluke, meaning you're ready to get hired. It's just a matter of who gives you the badge first. So that's why usually we interview more people. Plus, we know some people are going to fail the backgrounds, fail the psychological evaluations, and so forth. But the chief's interview could be the chief one-on-one with you. It could be the chief and his or her second in command, the deputy or the assistant, depending on the department. In some departments, it's the battalion chiefs. I've seen some departments do it that the fire chief himself or herself is not even involved in the chief interview. It's just battalion chiefs, or maybe division chiefs, deputy chiefs, assistant chiefs, different ranks of chief officers. And then the third interview may be the fire chief, or maybe the fire chief stays out of it and just allows his or her staff to give him or her recommendations. But again, it's a second level interview of all of you got to go through the oral interview. All of you, I mean, this many maybe passed, and now maybe this many go to the chief's interview for maybe these few spots. So it's, if you're not passing a written test, you're never going to probably get hired. If you can't pass oral interviews and you're not getting the chief's interviews, you're not going to get hired. So that's why, again, you got to understand the process and how to get better at each phase of the process. Usually at some point, when the department says, based on the oral interview scores in most departments, that they like you enough to maybe consider you for hiring, they give you what's known as a conditional job offer. It doesn't guarantee a job. It just means that we're going to give you a conditional job offer, and that allows them to dig more into your background. So a conditional job offer, hey, congratulations, you're number one on our list. However, before you start that recruit academy, here's a conditional job offer that is conditional upon you passing a background investigation, a psychological evaluation, maybe a polygraph, lie detector test. Not every department does all these things. A medical evaluation, maybe a chief's interview, a second interview, whatever else. But the conditional offer allows the background investigators, the psychological folks to dig deeper into you, because without that conditional job offer, they really don't have the legal rights. And I'm not an attorney, please don't quote me as such. That's my understanding is the conditional job offer pretty much allows them to dig deeper in. So don't think, hey, I got the conditional. I mean, years back, when I mentioned to you that I came out in the top 50 on my first test with City of San Jose, one of my first tests, I can't remember. Sorry, they run together after a while because I took so many tests, but it was one of my first few tests. Yeah, I'm top 50. They're going to hire 23 people. Well, at the time, I think they probably put 50 of us through backgrounds, conditional offers to 50. And I'm like, yeah. But then I realized, wait a second. I mean, I had no issues with my background from what I was told. I had no issues with the psychological evaluation as I was told. But they brought in 50 people because they wanted to pick the best of the best in their opinion. And best of the best is not a resume. We don't hire resumes, we hire people. And I think I'm a good person. I think I've got good character traits, good values, good things to offer a city, a community, a department. But again, what one fire chief is looking for today could change with the next fire chief tomorrow. I mean, culture is slightly different and based on department needs, and that's not meant negatively, just it's hard to explain. But anyway, I remember getting that conditional offer from San Jose, and then at the very end saying, hey, thank you very much, you'll be an alternate. I'm like, alternate, what's that mean? Well, you passed everything, but we've already picked the 23 that we want to pick. So if anybody cancels out the last minute, because that happens, especially at big city departments, I mean, where departments are hiring 10, 20, 30 people at a time. I mean, even in our department, there's been a few times where we've had people call us the day of the recruit academy, say the academy starts on Monday, day of the recruit academy start, or over the weekend, or even the week before, meaning they've passed everything. And then they say, hey, by the way, you know what? I'm starting Oakland next week. I'm going to pass on you guys. Thank you very much for the opportunity. But you know what? Oakland's my hometown. I was born and raised there. I've always wanted to work there. I'm going to go work for Oakland. And it's like, crap. We've already spent all this money on you, the time and energy. We obviously love you because you've gotten to this far, and we thought you'd be a great fit. But again, we get it. Those things happen. If you're that good talent with our department, chances are you're that way with other departments, and it's whoever gets you first. So departments recognize that, and that's why a lot of departments will have alternates, meaning people that have passed everything, just they can be able to say at the last minute, hey, by the way, Steve, yeah, I realize it's Saturday. Any chance that you want to start our academy in 36 hours? And you're like, huh? Those things strangely have happened. But not every department does that. Obviously, if someone quits a day of the same day of the first day of the academy, or the first week or second week or third week because they go work for another department, it's too late to bring someone in. But maybe the alternates are used for the next academy. So other parts of the hiring process I've hit on, and these can sometimes be in different forms and fashions or not done at all. Or there may be other things, but I haven't really seen anything else around the country. Medical exams where you go to a doctor that the department uses to make sure you're fit for duty, meaning you have the basic physical, I guess, capability to do the job. A psychological evaluation or examination where you meet with a psychologist, where they ask you 1,000 questions, it seems like. It's probably like 100 questions asked 10 different ways, and we'll talk a little more about each of these phases as we go along, but very painful process, but it's not that bad, just be honest. Maybe some departments do a lie detector test. Obviously, most departments do a recruit academy. Could be 1 day, 1 week. Most recruit academies are anywhere from a couple months to maybe 3 or 4 months. Some departments back east, some departments in the south, some departments in other parts of the country that don't require EMT or don't require paramedic or even an academy. They just require 18 years old high school diploma because they don't want to weed out candidates. I've seen 6-month long recruit academies. You're like, 6 months? Yeah, because they got to train you to be a firefighter. They got to then put you through EMT training and maybe even put you through paramedic training with no guarantee that you'll pass everything. So yeah, it's not uncommon. That's why I always encourage people, even if a department doesn't require EMT, paramedic, or even a fire academy, firefighter 1 certification, it's good to have those things because it opens up more doors. You can test for more departments. But more importantly, when you get called up to the big leagues, I mean, think about it. The big leagues, the pros, if you follow sports, you can appreciate that. You've already been through the same training you're going to get on the job. Meaning, when I got hired with my department, the recruit academy they put me through, the Firefighter 1 Academy, was the exact same one, give or take, that I went through like a couple of years previously at Chabot College. The book was the same, the textbook, the Essentials of Firefighting. Some things were slightly different, but it was the same concept because it's the state curriculum. It sure made going through the second time a heck of a lot easier because I've already been through it. So that was the benefit to me of, I've already seen the stuff. Now it's just a good refresher. And just because you're out of the recruit academy, most departments now have a probationary period. Recruit academy, you're in the academy usually Monday through Friday, getting the skills, getting your Firefighter 1's state sign-offs done by the state if that's how your department runs. Now you're at a firehouse. You graduate from the academy. Each of the recruits are sent out to different firehouses for 6 months, a year, 18 months, up to 3 years. I've seen probationary periods as low as 6 months, as many as 3 years. That's that period where, as somebody used to say, you're like Kleenex, meaning as a probationary firefighter, you're disposable. You can be fired for any reason or let go for any reason, as long as it's not obviously any of those illegal reasons based on sex, gender, ethnicity, and all those other protected class items through the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. But yeah, if you're not passing your skills, you're not passing your written tests, or maybe they just don't like you because you have a bad attitude, as long as they can prove it wasn't because of your race, gender, ethnicity, or any of those other protected reasons, they can let you go. And you may go, why would they let me go? They spent a lot of money. Yeah, but think about it. If they're seeing a snapshot of you in 6 months or a year of how you're probably going to be for the next 20, 30, 40 years, and think about it, that should be your best behavior period, meaning you should be shining on probation. That's probably the hardest you're ever going to work for most people. So if you're not even at that stellar level now in probation, you ain't going to get any better when you get off probation, because to some people, when they get off probation and now they're called, permanent employees, meaning it's pretty much impossible to fire you unless you do something that egregious where the progressive discipline chain allows them to fire you. You got it. Especially if you don't want to promote, you can stay a firefighter for the rest of your career. I mean, pretty much ride the gravy train. Well, that probationary period shouldn't be any different than real life. Yeah, you should work harder than anything else, but it shouldn't be a light switch going off when you get off probation, obviously, and the middle finger comes up. You're like, hey, you know what? Screw you guys. I ain't doing anything anymore. I'm off probation. They can't do anything to me. I'm golden now. And you click back in the recliner, click, click, click. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but unfortunately that does happen. But probationary period. So what you're seeing right here, of all these steps from the day, let's say the Fresno Fire Department opens up an announcement. Let's say they say, all right, Monday, June 1st, they're opening up applications for firefighter. From Monday, June 1st through Friday, July 5th, Friday, June 5th. Let's say for 5 days, they're opening it up for firefighter applications. You can apply online, say June 1st. They may not even have an academy starting to go through all these steps in the process. I would say if they took applications the first week of June, their academy probably won't start till January 1st at the earliest. Could be spring of next year, summer of next year, fall of next year. They may be hiring or planning on multiple academies off this list. Like in my department, if we had a good, robust list, meaning we had a good, strong list of people from number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we hire maybe the top 10. If we still got good names on the list, if we need another recruit academy because of retirement, say 6 months or a year down the road, we may keep that list and not retest because there's still good people on that list, meaning hopefully they're still available and they haven't been picked up by other departments. That's why it's critical to take every test you qualify for, because even your dream departments may hire multiple lists off that same test that you took. Now, it sucks if you didn't do well at that first test. Let's say you failed or you scored really low, and they hire multiple lists for and they keep the list for like 4 or 5 years. Yeah, that doesn't help you if you want to work for that department. But try not to get so locked in that this is my dream department, I got to only work here. Please have an open mind, because if you have that closed mind of just this department, you're probably going to be setting yourself up for failure, because very few people get to be hired by the only department and on the only test they ever take. Even if they take that test multiple times, it's a rarity. So branch out, broaden your horizons. You may not think you want to work for a department, but trust me, until you start working there, you never truly know what it's like on the other side of the fence, in the firehouse, on the rigs. I know a lot of people say, I don't want to work for that department. I'm like, why? Well, because of this and that and that, because my buddy works there and he says they suck. Have you ever thought of that maybe your buddy just has a bad attitude, and probably wherever your buddy worked at would suck? And in some cases, that's the truth. Because I bet you, well, not I bet you, I know for a fact, you can go to every department across the country, any business, any company, any governmental agency, any organization that has people. You're going to find people on one side of the pendulum that say they love the place. You're going to have people over here on the other side, the place sucks. But of course, they don't want to get out, or they can't get out for whatever reason. And then there's going to be some that are just in the middle that, oh, it's okay. There's good days, there's bad days. You know what? Every department has its pluses. Every department has its minuses. There is no perfect fire department. So don't get wrapped around that I don't want to work there, I only want to work there. Keep an open mind, and you'll have more opportunities, especially if you're willing to drive farther. I mean, depending on where you're at in the country, especially, I mean, I was out teaching in Nebraska late last year for a week at one of the fire departments, one of, I think, only a couple big career fire departments. I mean, a state of Nebraska is pretty big, not a lot of people. I can't remember the numbers, but Omaha, Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska are the number 1 and 2 big cities. And, you know, each of those departments combined probably have about 600 firefighters between the 2 departments, give or take, career firefighters. Well, if you live in Nebraska, I mean, obviously you test for the 2 biggest departments, Omaha and Lincoln, but if you don't get hired by those departments, you don't have a lot of other options, because most of the departments out there are volunteer departments, which isn't bad, but if you want to be career and get paid, you may have to move out of state, like many people do. I mean, there's some smaller departments, but that's the sort of the problem in certain parts of the country. So you may have to uproot yourself to get a job. That's why it's good to be flexible and not locked in on just Omaha or Lincoln. Great departments, but they may not happen for you. So you may have to go to Kansas City a couple hours away or wherever. But anyway, talking about passing all phases of the hiring process. You can't get hired if you don't pass the phases. And I know that's sort of a dumb question, Steve. True, but I'm just stating the obvious right now. I shared earlier, don't settle for the 70s, shoot for the high 90s. And you may not be getting high 90s or 80s on your written tests or your oral interviews when you start out. But you know what? The more you do, hopefully the better you get at them. And there's no harm in taking a test. Yeah, you may be, not every department charges you to take a test. I don't want to make it sound that way. Some departments still, you can do it for free, meaning you apply for free, you show up for free, take the oral interview. I mean, some departments and cities are like that. It's not bad if they charge you. I mean, it just is what it is. But anyway, the good part about taking a test is that now you've seen it. And now, especially let's say Omaha, for example, okay, let's say you fail Omaha's written test this year. Oh, I want to work for Omaha. Well, okay, who knows when they'll test again, and maybe next year, the year after, 3 years, 4 years. But anyway, chances are, at least you've seen the written test. They may use that same written test the next time and the time after that. Lincoln, Nebraska, an hour away, may use the same written test. I'm not saying they do because I don't know, but like I said, the benefit of seeing one written test is you probably will see the same test exactly or very similar in other agencies. Oral interviews don't change. Really, if you're testing for Omaha today, then you better share your love for the city of Omaha right now in the interview. But then if you're testing for Lincoln, Nebraska, tomorrow, you better share your love for the Lincoln, Nebraska Fire Department. And that's not being phony or anything else. I mean, most firefighters, if not every firefighter, realizes that you don't get hired the first test or the only department you test for. You got to apply everywhere. I mean, yeah, you may have a dream department, but don't get so locked in. Be able to expose yourself to as many departments as possible so you can eventually shoot for those higher scores. Some mistakes to avoid. Stretching yourself too thin. And I say that because obviously you need money to test, because if nothing else, just gas money. Meaning if you need to drive to take an oral interview, or drive to visit firehouses, or drive to take a written test, or get your CPAT, gas costs money. Food on the road may cost money, vehicle maintenance, supplements. You still got to work. And you may say, well, I don't want to work at all. I'm just going to focus on becoming a firefighter. Well, that doesn't look too good on an oral interview, because put yourself on the side of the oral interview panel. We want people, obviously, that are going to fit in with our culture, fit in with our family. We also want people that are hard workers, that are not lazy, that understand good work ethic. And we actually want people that have had a good track record, because if you can manage working a job or multiple jobs, and maybe even going to school, and maybe even manage relationships, friends, social life without getting in trouble, you're probably going to make a good firefighter, because again, we are going to throw a lot of different things at you. So the more you can handle before you get on the job, you're proving to us that, you know what, you can do it, but don't stretch yourself too thin. Sometimes you may have to say no to say yes in the long run. I mean, and you may not be able to take every test, but I would say take every test you can tell otherwise. Don't lie or stretch the truth. When I was starting out this process, I remember looking at my resume. Here I was. I graduated Cal State Hayward. I had my 4-year degree in hand. I'd been out of high school for 6.5 years. Do the math. Took me 6.5 years to get my 4-year degree, but that's okay. I was still finding myself, as they say. But yeah, I would have loved to have been hired at 18 or 19, but looking back at it, getting hired in my late 20s was probably better for me in the long run, because I think I was more mature than some people, or I think at least myself would have been as 8. Yeah, people do get hired 18, 19, 20. It happens. But personally, to me, I don't think I was mature enough to pass the recruit academy, pass probation. I mean, if you are, more power to you, to anybody that can do that. That's just me. But I remember when I was starting out with just my 4-year degree, and I was working at Long's Drug Store, which is now CVS. That's really all I had on my resume, besides a high school diploma and a 4-year degree and work experience at Long's. And I'm like going, man, I got nothing. And it makes you feel inadequate. But then it took me a while. And I say it took me a while to figure this out. But when I get back to lying, when you think that you're inadequate, I think you run the risk of maybe stretching the truth. And I see a lot of that on resumes. Well, I love it on resumes when people put on the resume, let's say they're attending New York University. They're going to New York University for a 4-year degree. So they're getting their 4-year degree, New York University, and it says 2000, let's say 2019 to present. Well, 2019 to present is about a year, give or take. Well, it could be 6 months if it started in December, or it could be a year and a half if they started January 19. But they'll usually put 2019 to present, and then they'll put like Associate of Arts degree or Associate of Science degree, or even, Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science degree in big letters. And then they'll put sometimes in small letters pending or in progress. But here in big letters is the Bachelor of whatever degree, 4-year degree, 2-year degree, and then the little letters pending or in process or not at all. And then when you're on an oral board, you look at that and you say, well, wait a second, how do you get a 4-year degree in a year and a half? Well, the answer is you can't in most places. And then when you ask the question on the oral board and the candidate goes, well, I don't have my 2-year degree or my 4-year degree, when are you going to get it? Well, I'm looking at maybe 2021 or 2023. Right now it's in process or pending. Well, anything in life is pending. Seriously, life is pending. I don't like putting pending because that's sort of generic. How about instead put expected completion of December 2021? At least expected completion shows that you have goals. But back to this initial point of, don't put big bold words, 4-year degree, 2-year degree, or whatever else, and then small worlds, pending or whatever in process or not at all, because you're stretching the truth, because you're thinking or wanting me to believe that you have a 4-year degree or 2-year degree. Instead, working towards a 4-year degree in whatever, expected completion here. But again, I get that, because when I was on the other side of the table, like you all are right now, I'm thinking, God, I got to have this. I got to make this be perfect. I got to have the perfect resume. There is no perfect resume. There is no perfect person. So don't think that you have to lie or stretch the truth, because it will come back in the background or an interview or something else in the process. Trust me, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I mean, not really lying, but stretching the truth. And I'll talk about that in next week's webinar when I get in a little more of that in the Reach for the Badge webinar next Saturday. Don't be that person. Getting poor grades. Now, grades alone will not keep you back. Trust me. I mean, I know a lot of people go, well, oh my God, I got a 2.5 on my report card in high school or college grades were in the twos, not the threes, not the fours. I hate to say it, but most employers don't look that deep at their grades because, I mean, they'll look at your background, they'll look at your grades from high school and college, but in all honesty, if we disqualified people because of poor grades, we probably wouldn't have hired most of the people we've hired today because, I mean, 4.0 when I was going to school was the highest. I know there's higher now. I don't, whatever. 4.0 is the highest. My high school GPA was like 2.0 something. I barely passed high school. Not because I was stupid, I don't think. I just wasn't into it. I wasn't motivated or inspired. 2.09, I think, to get through high school. But then I went up to Cal State Hayward. I got into a 4-year degree on like a 2.0 something. Don't ask me how. I guess they were desperate for students at the time. Find a school that's desperate for students. But anyway, I have a 4-year degree. So I went in there, even through my 4-year degree process, I think I graduated that like with about a 2.1. I mean, again, 2.0 passing. I shouldn't have probably even passed my 4-year college in the 6 years I was there. I think I had to beg with my chemistry teacher, can he just give me a C? You'll never see me again. I'm not going to be a chemistry major, little did I know, be a firefighter, and fire behavior deals with chemistry. But I'm like, just give me a C because if I don't pass, I need this. And he felt sorry for me. That was cool. Well, I still got hired. The oral board doesn't look at your grades. Yeah, it comes up in your backgrounds. The fire chief may see them, but by that point, they've seen other things. But here's my point. I went on to get my master's degree. Well, first, before my master's, when I finished my 4-year college and I wanted to become a firefighter, I immediately enrolled at Chabot College to be able to get my EMT and my Firefighter 1 Academy. Well, you look at my Chabot Fire Tech grades for my 2-year degree, it was almost a 4.0. And it was, I think I got a wildland was my weakness for some reason. I got like a B in 2 wildland classes and a hazmat class, go figure chemistry. At least I got a B on this one. But anyway, I got some B's and C's, but everything else was A's. My master's degree was all A's. Why? Probably because I was more motivated and inspired and I enjoyed the subject matter. Maybe I was probably more mature at the time as well too. But the point about grades is that even though they may not get looked at, it can show your motivation and inspirational level. And obviously, when we hire you, the Recruit Academy, in most departments, they're going to require that you get at least an 80% average to pass. Most Recruit Academies, if it's say a 16-week Recruit Academy, which is common, 4 months, you may have daily tests. Like when I got hired, it was every day you had a 10-question quiz. Every day, 10-question quiz on the previous day's material. And you had to get an 80% average. Well, you could get a 7 out of 10 on one day's test, but you better get a 9 out of 10 on the next day's test. And then those weekly tests. And if I didn't keep an 80% average along with the other people that I got hired with, we'd be out, we'd be gone. And you may go, that's sort of mean. No, it's not mean. I mean, if you can't pass the academics of a basic Recruit Academy, how are you going to do every year with your EMT? Because you have to do EMT recertification every 2 years, maybe other types of recertification that requires you to pass tests. I know people say, I'm not a good test taker. Well, learn to be one. So grades can definitely help. Second chances are not guaranteed. I know second chances are great when we can do them, but look in today's world. A lot of people want second chances, but for themselves, but for nobody else. That's why I'm saying none of us are perfect, myself included, but hopefully your first mistake, if you have well, you will make mistakes. It's not so egregious or bad that you don't get a second chance, but try not to have to always hope for a second chance and don't assume they're guaranteed. So do the best you can. Is getting fired from a job going to keep you from becoming a firefighter? No. I've known many people that were fired from non-fire jobs that got hired as firefighters. And as long as you're honest about it in your background, you don't lie about it, they're going to ask your former employer, let's say it was Safeway Supermarkets, hey, why did you fire Ralph? Well, we fired Ralph because this. As long as you're honest about that, I know many fire chiefs that would say, I don't give a crap, I'm going to hire the person anyway because that was 5 years ago and they've matured since then. You know, what was the reason for the fire? I mean, why did you get fired? As long as you're honest, I've seen people get hired. I've known people to get fired from fire departments. Usually getting fired from a fire department, usually on probation or during the Recruit Academy, that's kiss of death in most departments. Because think about it. You're a fire chief. Why would you hire someone that got fired from the next door neighbor department when there's all these other people that probably were never fired from a fire job or any job? I mean, and you got to get into the reason of why were you fired? Was it academics? Was it skills? Was it attitude, behavior, physical fitness related? I don't know. What was it? Well, like I said, I've known many people that have been fired from a fire department and got hired by another fire department. And what it comes down to is it's because I think they're good people deep down inside, and they found departments and fire chiefs that are willing to take a second chance on them. And they're doing great at their next employers. I mean, I've known guys 25 years ago that were fired from their first fire jobs, and they've done great for the last 20, 25, 30 years. So to me, don't have more barriers. I'm trying to eliminate the barriers from you. But if you do get fired, it's not the end of the world, but you better have a good rock solid plan to convince that next employer that it's worth taking a chance on you, someone who's already had a chance. Some other mistakes, accidents, tickets, DUIs. I mean, my DMV, because they're going to look at your background investigation as part of your Department of Motor Vehicles check. Now, accidents, traffic tickets, when you looked at all mine, God, it was a long sheet of accidents. I could, for whatever reason, I kept getting in accidents before I got on the job. I can't remember the last accident I've had. I can't remember the last traffic ticket I've had. It's been that long, thankfully. But when I was testing it, it held me back from some departments. Like I said, it took me 4.5 years to get hired. I bet you that I went through a number of backgrounds. I was told I never failed a background, but I just had departments that, well, you didn't fail it, but we're just deciding to hire Ralph instead of you. And they'll never tell you why. Maybe it was because of accidents, traffic tickets. I had a DUI that was reduced to a wet reckless. At the time, DUIs were not looked upon in such a, how do I say this? Back in the early 90s, a DUI was just like, I remember getting asked this question in an oral interview by a local department. They go, is there anything, when we do a background investigation on you, is there anything we'll find that that you're embarrassed by or that you want to tell us about right now? And I go, hey, I made a stupid mistake. I got pulled over for DUI. Thankfully, it wasn't a DUI. It was reduced to just reckless driving. I paid X amount of money. I had probation. I never went to jail, but it was a lesson well learned to not drink and drive. This is before Uber and Lyft and everything. And I shared my life lesson of, yeah, that happened a couple of years ago. It was a great lesson learned. And I remember one chief goes, shit. He goes, I don't care about that. He goes, half the department's got DUIs. And I just sort of, oh, okay. Well, that's not the same in today's world. If you get a DUI in a lot of departments today, and you're applying for a department, there's departments that in their rules and regulations, if you've had a DUI in the last 3 years or 5 years, they won't even hire you. If you get a DUI on the job once you're hired, you may be fired, depending on the department, the part of your country, and the past practice and everything else. So DUIs are a lot more serious for obvious reasons today. The point I'm making is try to remove as many barriers as possible, because again, departments, you're a fire chief. Do you want to hire high drama? Do you want to hire someone that can't drive a vehicle? Well, I'm not going to be an engineer. You're going to drive department vehicles at some point. And now we have to insure you and maybe our own insurance and everything else. I say not keeping contact info up to date for a reason. I mentioned earlier that some departments may keep their hiring list for years. Cleveland, Ohio, 11 years they kept a list for 11 years, meaning they didn't test for 11 years. Imagine how many people in that 11 years, there was probably thousands on that list, thousands. Imagine how many people moved, tons, because the average person probably moves every couple of years for whatever reason, by their choice, not their choice. Well, if you're not keeping good records, how many people you think move to another location and then let the city of Cleveland Human Resources Department know that, hey, by the way, can I update you with my contact information? Most people don't think that way. Very few do. I mean, you got to be organized, because it could be to your advantage. So when you move, change your address. So you may say, well, I was number 5,000. There's no chance in hell that Cleveland's going to hire me. Never say never. 11 years later, those guys, imagine that 11 years later, hey, by the way, you probably don't remember this, but 11 years ago, you were number 6,000 on the list, but now you're number 5, because people have either been hired, people have changed their not changed their contact information, people haven't passed backgrounds, and guess what? Now you're number 5. Want to work for Cleveland Fire? I gave up 5 years ago, but hell, I'll take a job now. Those things happen. So keep your contact info up to date. That's why it's good to keep good records. And don't think, well, I'm not number 1 or number 5 or number 10. I'm just number 100 or 1,000. You never know. So keep your stuff up to date. And there's usually a way to do that online now with the city websites to update your contact information. With that, quickly, I'll just touch on, if you're not checking your junk or your spam folder on a regular basis, you may be missing out on a lot of crap. It's called junk and spam for a reason. But you may be missing out on some good things too. our department, like many others, when it comes time to notifying people of who gets to go to the oral interviews after they take the written test, we usually send out emails because we can't call a couple hundred people. It's easier to just send out mass emails. And the mass emails usually say, hey, if you're interested in an oral interview, please fill out this application, submit it by this date, and call us to schedule an oral interview date. And we had a number of people that were apparently on the list that should have been called. And then after the fact, I never got an email, or it should have been emailed. This came up like, well, why did he get an email and I didn't get an email? And then it usually comes down to check your junk or spam folder. Well, that sucks. Yeah, it does suck, but we can't, I mean, I can't answer why it goes in some junk mail folders and not in others. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason sometimes. So the point is, if you're not checking that junk or spam folder daily, you may be missing out on valuable things. Trust me, been there, done that. Not having appropriate clothing. This is the one time in your life of investing maybe in your future that is so critical. For guys, I really encourage you guys to have just one nice suit. And not sport coat, sport coat and slacks have their place, and some of you may go in sport coat and slacks. That's so 90s or 80s. Well, I'm not saying you have to be in the 90s or the 80s. One nice suit will pay off dividends. I had one suit that was given to me as a holiday present, and I probably wore that suit for 10 years. I mean, I think I still have it in my closet, but I wouldn't fit into it today. But one suit is all you need. One nice suit, and it does, don't worry about it looking conservative, whether I'm not a fashion expert by any means here, t-shirt and shorts, if I'm not in my fire department uniform, so don't expect fashion advice from me. Google that stuff or find some good resources. But anyway, one good suit for the guys, as long as it's not too flashy, just conservative is fine. And again, I'll leave it at that. Suit, polishable shoes, non-white socks, non-white, something that matches, probably one or two nice ties, and probably 2 dress shirts as well, and a white shirt under the dress shirt. And when I say white shirt under the dress shirt, don't be that person that wears their billboard t-shirt. Like, let's say your fire department, I got my fire department shirt underneath my dress shirt and my tie, but my suit coat's over it. They won't notice it. Yeah, they probably won't notice it. But what if you take that coat off for whatever reason, and now you're going to the bathroom while you're waiting for your oral interview, and all of a sudden you turn around and through your white shirt, you can see, Jones Fire Department behind. It's like, just tacky. But white shirt, I say multiple shirts because you may find yourself having multiple things in back-to-back days or even on the same day for different departments. And you may not have time to iron them or take them to the dry cleaner or whatever else. And here's where you'll need to use it. Obviously, for a physical ability test, it's probably shorts, sweats, or whatever else. For written test, you're not wearing some people actually do wear a written test to a suit. I get that. Written suit to a written test. You don't need to go that far, but nothing says better to be overdressed. But anyway, you'll definitely need a suit for your oral interview, and you'll definitely need a suit for the chief's interview, suit for the background investigation, psychological evaluation, not for the medical evaluation, probably just short sweats, whatever else. But then besides that, before you get hired in the academy, a lot of departments do recruit orientation night, meaning if the academy starts on Monday, maybe the previous Friday, they'll invite hey, we're hiring all 15 of you starting for the next 4 months. Please bring your family members and your friends to see orientation night so we can tell them what you're going to be up with for the next 4 months to 6 months so they can give you the time and space that you need. Now, obviously, at that point, you want to wear probably a nice suit. For women, I can't give you fashion advice, but just something that sort of like men, find something that's very professional looking, whether that's a pantsuit, whether that's a appropriate dress, whether that's whatever. And when I say appropriate, again, you figured out yourself. You ask the professionals you think are professionals in that area. Talk to firefighters, get some opinions, but have at least one nice outfit that you can wear. It'll pay off dividends. Keep your resume up to date. Sort of goes into keeping your contact info up to date, but keep your resume up to date, because most of you probably go, I hate doing a resume. I hate doing a resume too, but it's easier if you keep it up to date with your accomplishments. Don't let your certs or your license expire. Something simple as your EMT, your driver's license, they've got expiration dates on them. Don't expect the DMV to send you a renewal announcement or your EMT state EMS agency to send you the renewal requirement. That's up to you. And it's sad because I see a lot of applicants on the announcement. We say, hey, at the time of your oral interview or the time of the academy, usually it's time of the oral interview, please bring an updated copy of your CPAT, meaning a CPAT within 12 months or 6 months. Please bring us your latest version of your EMT just to prove that you're still current, and your driver's license with you so we can know who it is because it's got your picture. And it's amazing, every now and then the candidate's like, oh man, I let my EMT cert lapse. Well, then you're not an EMT. Or I love the ones, well, my DMV is not good right now. So you just drove 2 hours from your house to the interview on a suspended or an expired license. Well, or even worse, you just forgot the license at home. So you're licensed, but you forgot it. That gets back to character. If that's your character and that's your expectation for ethics and integrity, we got bigger issues. Driving without a license, okay, it's okay to break the law there, but keep that stuff up to date. I'm just trying to share things to not disqualify you and to keep you above the radar screen. There's no reason to miss out on job opportunities. Again, no reason to not take a test. If there is a testing opportunity that you qualify for, even with just 18 years old, high school diploma, well, it's 3 hours away, it's 2 hours away, it's a 4-hour drive. And your point is, well, I don't want to work down there. And why not? You know, well, you going to turn down a job? Well, no. Then, well, I don't want to move. Take the process. You can always say no. But again, you also don't want to miss out on opportunities. Try to keep your background investigation information up to date. And if you've never gone through a background, it's painful. If you've filled out a job application before, and if you haven't filled out a job application, I encourage you, go to any city website. Wherever you live, go to that city's website. Chances are the city human resources department, as they are usually called, because they handle all the testing for every single city department, police, fire, public works, recreation, library. The city human resources department will usually allow you to apply online. And a lot of them use the same applicant management system, sorry, tongue twister. Meaning if you apply for the city of Fremont, they may use the same system that the city of Hayward, a couple cities over, uses, maybe the same city as Milpitas next door uses. There's a few different systems that a lot of HR departments use because it's, the nice thing is it keeps a track history and it's not just hard copy as old school was. But an application is maybe 3, 4, 5 pages of a lot of information of an application. A background investigation, if you've never done one, is now about 20 pages or more. It's the application on steroids. The application that you're initially applying for may say, just list any jobs you've held for the last 10 years. And if you're 19, 20, it may not be, maybe easy, but let's say you're 36 and you've had a ton of jobs. Well, only 10 years. Well, when you get your background investigation, they'll usually say, not 10 years, list every job, because now they want to go down every rabbit hole possible. So that's why if you've never done a background investigation, I encourage you to go to my website, one of two, ChabotFire.com, that I shared earlier, ChabotFire.com, the free stuff link, free. One of the items I have is a background investigation pack, a standard pack. I mean, there's not that many different background investigations. It's standard. There's nothing confidential on it, but it's the type of information they're going to ask for: financial, credit history, work history, family history, job history, which is work, I guess, volunteer history, all that stuff. And if you've never done one of those, take the time to look at one of those, because you can't fill it out on the fly. It's going to take you weeks. So I encourage you to go to ChabotFire.com, free stuff link, and search for the background investigation packet and just look at all the things we're looking for. And make sure you keep that stuff confidential, however, so because there's sometimes some confidential information there, but that's what they're looking for. Not properly preparing for each phase, I think should be pretty obvious. Don't just prepare for the written test, the physical ability test, the oral. You better be preparing for everything. More importantly, prepare for the position of firefighter. Because if you're preparing for the end goal, the position, it shouldn't matter what we throw at you on the written test, the physical ability test, the oral interview, whatever else. Late submission required materials, it's pretty simple. If they say first 100 applications, it's first 100. And if you're 101, too late. If they say 5 o'clock on Friday, June 5th is the deadline, Friday at 5 o'clock is the deadline. Now, right now, with the coronavirus situation, I'm seeing a lot of cities like Los Angeles just did. They had to extend their filing period for a while because they're not getting a lot of applications, which I get. So don't bank on the postponement. Get it in early, and don't wait to the end because things come up. If they say we'll take applications from, say, June 1st to July 1st, let's say it's a month period, get the darn thing done right away. Because last thing you want to do is wait for June. Oh, I'll do it the day before. Hey, life happens in strange ways. Get that darn thing done, because then you may have another one to fill out, and you don't have to worry about stressing over that. You never want to find yourself in a position of not being able to test the fire department because you don't qualify. For example, let's say you want to work for whatever fire department it is, but that department when you do the homework and you do the research and you see over the last umpteen years, they've only hired, let's say, paramedics. Some departments have only hired entry-level firefighter paramedics or entry-level candidates that went through a certain college firefighter academy. Like in Southern California, a lot of the San Diego area departments used to only say, smaller departments outside San Diego or even San Diego, you have to have gone through a college academy that was right down in that San Diego County area. So you could have gone through a college academy up north or anywhere else, didn't matter because you didn't go through that college academy. So again, if you want to work in that area, you've done your research and you realize, well, heck, if I want to work down there, I better do this or that, or, not apply. Obviously, we talked about instructions earlier, but it's not just following instructions, but make sure you follow them correctly. Not keeping up with the knowledge, skills, and abilities you've acquired. Obviously, if you've gone through EMT, gone through an academy, gone through paramedic school, or you've been a volunteer firefighter, you've been exposed to various knowledge, skills, and abilities. If you're not actively volunteering after an academy or actively working on an ambulance or a fire engine after EMT or paramedic school, those skills go down south quick. You forget a lot of that stuff more than you ever learned. So that's why I say is you may have a skills test, you may have some type of knowledge test to test those knowledges. So keep up on everything. I want to touch on ensuring that you have excellent written communication skills. It's weird. Right now, because of the current situation around the country, I see a lot of colleges that are laxing or letting go of their SAT requirements or their other requirements to be able to apply for college. And I don't know what the answer is. I get why they're doing it. I mean, I get it, maybe because people don't have access to those or whatever. Well, it almost seems like, and I know you're getting a broader pool to pick from, but a firefighter, even if you just want to be a firefighter, you don't want to ever promote to say engineer, captain, chief, you still need good written communication skills. That's one of the weaknesses we're seeing around the country in pretty much every line of work. Employers around the country in every line of work, especially private industry, are claiming that the applicants of today are not coming out of college or even high school with the proper written or oral communication skills. Hey, as firefighters, we need good written, we need good oral communication skills. We're gonna evaluate them. So take some English classes, as painful as those can be, but you're gonna get tested on some of that stuff for the written test. You may not use it as a firefighter right away, but especially if you become an officer and have to complete reports, you'll be using that stuff. You've got to be comfortable with putting an email together. I mean, and I know this sounds simple, and I know there's a lot of assumptions made that, well, someone that's 20 years old, and I say this is an assumption because I don't believe it's true. I hear people, well, someone's a certain age group, so they got to be great at technology. Well, yeah, like any age group, there's some that are great at technology, some that are terrible at it. And I remember having one of my 20-year-olds in class, I assumed naively that because of his age, this is my mistake, I go, well, just send me an email and attach that to the email. And he didn't know how to do an attachment. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Someone in today's world that doesn't know how to, click the little paper clip at the top and attach a Word document, he couldn't do it. And I'm like, oh shit, well, let me show you how easy it is to do. I didn't want to laugh at him, but I'm like, okay, here's what you do. You have it saved to your desktop, then you upload it. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, but he's not a bad person. He'll probably make a good firefighter, but we're not going to teach you English classes on the job. That's not what we do. You need to come to that stuff with us. The problem is if you ever want to become an officer and have to write reports, especially evaluate people, if you don't have that skill on your own coming in, you're going to struggle becoming an officer. And a lot of officers do struggle with poor communication skills. Besides written communication, you got to have excellent oral communication skills. There's a lot of good resources. As painful as this speaking, you got to be comfortable speaking to an oral board, to a chief, to anybody, to a firefighter, to the citizens, in front of school kids. There's a lot of good resources out there. Even if you can't afford to go to college speech class, take one. Toastmasters is a great local organization that are around the country, not just speaking, but also leadership skills. Most smartphones today come with, the ability to be able to audio tape yourself or videotape yourself. So, I hate hearing myself talk for whatever reason, but again, it helps me because it forces me to make sure that I'm not just a talking head or the robot up here just speaking like I'm a robot with no, you can't be that type of person because you've got to be able to be a really great communicator at your oral board because that's a lot of your skills or your score is communication. A lot of things you can do to practice and rehearse. Watch newscasters. Most newscasters have got their act together when it comes to communication. So talk about researching a fire department. Obviously, if you want to work for XYZ fire department or even to test with them, do station visits. If they got one firehouse, it makes it easy. If they're the LA City Fire Department with 100 plus firehouses, don't think you have to visit all 100 some firehouses. Oh, by the way, on all 3 shifts, because there's usually A shift, B shift, C shift, there's no way. Maybe pick a fire station that's got the fireboat. Maybe pick a fire station downtown that's got an engine and a truck. Maybe pick a fire station up in the hills that's got maybe just an engine. Maybe pick a station that's at the airport. You're never going to, and again, we don't want you to be that OCD that you're, oh, I got it, or anal retentive where I got to visit everything. Be able to demonstrate to the oral board that, listen, I want this job for a number of reasons. I've had a chance to visit a number of your firehouses, talk to a number of your personnel. This is why I want to work for this department. Your firefighters and crews tend to love this city, love this department for these reasons, blah, blah, blah. Connect in that station visit during your oral interviews. Regarding resumes and applications, just not every department requires a resume. There's maybe half the departments allow you to submit a resume at the time of application filing. So you got to at least have a resume. Some of them don't allow them during the oral interviews. I mean, a lot of them don't during the oral interviews because they expect you to communicate everything. Just because it's written down, you don't get credit for it. It has to be said. That's why you've got to know, you got to know your resume to be able to speak your resume and sell yourself. Regarding the application on the very bottom, follow instructions. I've harped on that. Make a copy of it, save a copy of it, because again, that application, you want to review that before your oral interview or your chief's interview, and when you do your background investigation, you want to make sure the information on the initial application matches the background, because then there's red flags if they don't. Your resume, firefighter, even if you're going for engineer or captain, even if you're on the job going for captain, 1-page resume is enough. None of you have enough. I mean, I'm the same way, don't get me wrong. 1 page is enough. Without spending a lot of time on resumes, on my free stuff link on Code3Fire and ChabotFire.com, I've got a lot of information on resumes and applications if you do some digging. Really, the difference between a resume and an application is they tell you what goes in the application. They tell you. Resume, you decide what goes on there. So just, I've got some samples up there. There is no right or wrong way. Don't kill yourself on having the perfect resume, because, excuse me, there is none. Focus more on your oral interview, but at least have something there. Written examination, I touched on all these things for the most part. Nothing I don't think that I've already talked about. But again, there are books out there. If you do some homework, there's the Firefighters bookstore, has a lot of, firebooks.com, just Google firefighter books. There are some written examination test books out there on Amazon as well, too, if you do some homework. So find your strengths, find your weaknesses, so you can work on the weaknesses. Talk about the physical ability test. CPAT's probably the most common, but don't get a false sense of security. A lot of people think, well, I passed the CPAT, I'm good. Well, the CPAT is a snapshot in time. The CPAT just says, in short, you have the ability to enter a fire academy, college or recruit academy for a fire department, and you have the ability to start that academy. It doesn't mean that you're physically fit enough to finish the academy. And I say that because we've had some that passed the CPAT, so they got to the academy, and within the first week of the academy, they were huffing and puffing, they were almost passing out, they were struggling, and it's like, people go, well, they had their CPAT, right, but that CPAT was like 9-10 months ago, and guess what happened in between then? No physical fitness program to speak of, no cardio, no weights, no strength training, diet sucked. Well, it's a full-time job, and you're that person that needs to keep yourself in shape, whatever that is. So don't just rely on the CPAT because it's a false sense of security. It's got to be a lifelong venture on making sure you're fit. And I'm not perfect. None of us are. I can do better. My fitness can be better. I could run more. I could work out more, but at least be aware of this stuff. The oral interview, just some key points in the oral interview. I touched on a lot of this stuff. Most oral interviews are anywhere from 2 to 7 people, typically captains, lieutenants, engineers, maybe some firefighters, but usually the people that rank above that are going to supervise you. So as a firefighter, your supervisor is usually a lieutenant or a captain in most departments. Maybe a battalion chief, then there's maybe the 2nd level chief's interview. I challenge you and I encourage you to rehearse your answers. There is no trick questions. On my website, you'll see a lot of sample oral board questions. They're nothing confidential. I'm not sharing the secrets, so they're not the exact ones we use. But I will say, if you take 10 different oral boards for 10 different fire departments over the course of, say, a year, you'll probably go, wow, they pretty much ask the same questions. I mean, maybe the city of Fremont says, why do you want to work for Fremont versus Hayward? Why do you want to work for Hayward? But they all ask you typically the same types of questions. There's no There should be never a trick question if you've done your homework. So know yourself inside and out, know the department inside and out, know the community inside and out. Passion and enthusiasm, you should be golden. And I say that easier said than done. But know yourself inside and out. Your brain, your brain, your heart, your resume, your application, your goals, strengths, your weaknesses, be able to talk about those things. The last two items here, I don't have time to go into now, but I encourage you to go to my website, chabotfire.com, the free stuff link. I have the handouts on these. Don't just answer the question, answer the question simply this. We may ask you a question of what's your greatest strength or three greatest strengths, but what's your greatest strength? There is no right answer. As long as you say one strength, you've answered the question. But here's the thing, a lot of candidates go, well, my greatest strength is I'm motivated, okay? Or I'm dependable, okay? I'm loyal, okay? I'm hardworking, okay? I'm ethical, okay? I'm nice, okay? Not one of those is better than the other. They're all good in their own right. What matters more is don't just give me the answer, back it up. I'm nice. Here's an example to prove that I am nice. So support it with an answer to back it up. And then more importantly, tie it into the position. I'm nice. Here's an example of how I'm nice at my current job, maybe, or when I was going to school or whatever. And I think it's critical for firefighters to be nice because guess what? Everyone's expecting me to be nice or dependable or motivated or hardworking. My coworkers, the public, the community, the department, the fire chief, tie it into the position. So answer the question, support it with an answer, tie it into the position, which is easy to do. Versus most candidates, I'm motivated. And then 3 candidates later, I'm motivated. And now the oral board, the oral board's seeing hundreds of candidates and they've had maybe 20 of them all say I'm motivated. The first one, it's okay, but by the 5th one, oh God, someone else that's motivated. Oh, someone else that's loyal. Oh, versus by personalizing it, now you're making it unique and they're going to try to hopefully remember you in a good possible way. That gets back to, you got to know yourself and you got to know your whole history to be able to share little slices of your history. And lastly, the introduction body conclusion method. Think about having to write a paper, and this is painful for some, but think back to your English class. When you were told, hey, write a paper, you didn't just vomit out the answer. Let's say you had to write a paper on ladders, fire service ladders. You don't just immediately go to the guts of your paper and say, all right, blah, blah, blah on ladders. Think about that. You got to usually start out with a paragraph introduction, finish it off with a paragraph conclusion, and then in the middle, you have your body or your outline, whatever you call it. And you think about that, maybe 1 to 5 bullet points of your outline, your body. That's how you write a paper. That's how you give a speech if you really think about it. So writing is a lot like speaking. And that's why I go back to earlier, take speech classes because it's going to help you not just do well in the interview, but it's going to help you package yourself and sell yourself. So get back to that question on the bullet before. What's your greatest strength? Now I can also use introduction, body, conclusion. Most candidates go right out to answer, well, my greatest strength is motivation. Okay, that's a passing score. They're not going to fail you on that, but you're not going to rise the 80s and the 90s. So think about intro, body, conclusion. In one sentence, I'll have an opening or an intro, and then one sentence, I'll back it up at the end with a conclusion or a summary, and then I'll have maybe a couple sentences for my body. So think about this. Hear me out here. And the question is, what's your greatest strength? All right, well, I have many strengths I think I could qualify or classify as my number one greatest strength. I think the number one strength that I want to talk about right now is my dependability. So in one sentence, I've repeated back the question, that's one thing. I also told them sort of covertly that I have more than one strength, but I'm also going to listen to the question. I'm going to follow the question by giving them one great strength of dependability. I set the stage. Now you think about dependability for my body or my outline. I think dependability is my most important strength for this reason alone. Dependability, here's an example why. My example was with, Long's Drugstore for the last 10 years, and I have not called in sick at all a day in 10 years or whatever it is I use. That's very dependable versus, oh, I've been working for 10 years. I've only called in sick 25 times. Don't use that as an example. But anyway, I'm dependable. I've only called in sick 1 time in Long's Drugs in 10 years or whatever it was I used. And I think it's critical for firefighters to be dependable because as a firefighter, everyone depends on us. The public depends on us to show up promptly, to solve a problem, to be nice to them, to do our job. My crew depends on me to get there on time, to have their back, to be able to know my job, do my job, help them out. The department's expecting me to be dependable, to show up on time, blah, blah. That's my body. And now a couple sentences, summarize it. So over the last minute or two, hopefully I've been able to show you how much dependability is my number one greatest strength that can benefit the Oakland Fire Department. Thank you. So one or so sentence at the beginning, one or so sentence at the end to summarize it. It's almost like if you've ever heard, tell me what you're going to tell me. Tell me what you told me. Tell me what you're going to tell me is the intro. Tell me actually is the body, the outline. Tell me what you told me is actually the summarization or the conclusion. So like I said, I would encourage you to read more about how I did that on my free stuff link at ChabotFire.com. You're not me and I'm not you. And I don't want you to become me. I want you to just use some of the techniques, because don't repeat what I say, but use it for yourself and your situation. So that's that. Chief's interview I talked about, layout. Typically it could be a number of different chief officers or gold badges. The chief at that point usually gets more in depth on your background. At that point, they probably have seen your background. They can ask you more specific questions than the initial oral board can, because the first oral board is usually very generic, same questions, same candidates. Now the chief can look at your resume and call you out on different things. Hey, so that's why you don't want to lie or stretch the truth, because, hey, what do you got this here? Tell me about this. So know yourself. Background investigation, like I talked about, is 25 pages. Go to ChabotFire.com with the free stuff link. Take a look at all that stuff and have that information, financial, college, high school, maybe transcripts. It's a pain to fill out a background investigation. But the point I'm going to make on the background investigation is you better have that stuff ASAP, because even though they may say, hey, you know what? I've heard this happen before. Hey, you know what? You got 2 weeks to fill the background out. Oh, perfect. But if you fill it out early, there's a better chance that you may move forward, because they may move forward with those that follow instructions and get them done early versus those that wait till the last minute, because we don't need any more last minute Larrys or last minute Lisas. So sometimes it can go to your benefit, because you may end up as an alternate, as strange as it may seem. People usually don't fail backgrounds. The key is just being honest. We know there's skeletons in your closet, so be honest. Don't try to hide things. That's where sometimes backgrounds are sometimes rated as, like, every department does it differently based on who does their background, but it may be a B, C, D, F rating scale. A, B, C meaning passing, D meaning buyer beware, and then F meaning, really, buyer really beware. But every department's different and every situation's different. Very rarely do people get A backgrounds I've seen. Very rarely do people sometimes get like F backgrounds. Usually it's just those ones that are like, well, and when a background company does the background, they're usually hired by the fire department to do the background, do all the hard work, the digging, the research, and then they present it to the fire chief saying, you know what, hey, I wouldn't hire the person, but you know what, you do what you want, chief, because it's up to the fire chief or the city or whoever to do their hiring, not the background investigations. That's why sometimes you go, how did that person get hired? They got fired from that department. They were in jail for that. Yeah, they were honest on their background. That fire chief knew what they were hiring. They wanted to give them a third chance or a fourth chance. Hey, those things happen. So, but usually as long as you're honest, as long as you're thorough and complete, that's why I say take a look at a background packet before you have to fill it out, because it's not a time to look at it for the first time when you've got a time crunch of 1 week or so to fill it out. Psychological evaluation, I hit on that earlier. It's just sometimes 1,000 total questions, maybe 100 questions asked 10 different ways. It's a pain, and it's like a 4-hour process of a lot of people go, well, how do I pass this? Well, don't try to out-psych this, because they're trying to use a lot of questions that are similar to maybe things that were found in the background investigation. They're going to ask you, so tell us, do you like flowers? Yes. Do you want to be a florist? Not really. Or maybe it's only yes, no. So you hate florists. You hate flowers. No, I don't hate flowers or florists. I just don't want it. But then it's a weird process, but the whole thing is people try to out-psych this. You can't. The flip side is the information that's been gathered by psychological evaluators and background investigators, there's actually some good science to it. I know a lot of people think this is just crazy hogwash stuff, but in all honesty, when I was involved with their hiring process and some of the things that I was told by the background and the psychological folks, and then see that person after they finish the academy or maybe don't have, or maybe whatever comes up, it's interesting that, wow, it's not a perfect science, but they get into some good information. So it's hard to describe until you've been with one. So just the key is be yourself, and hopefully you're not screwed up that badly. But not some departments, I'm told, don't do psychological evaluations. So But again, as long as you're honest and you're not trying, because if you're trying to lie, that's when you get screwed up. Because if you, like I said, 100 questions, question 101 might be the same as 301, as 503, and then 702, but slightly different wordings. And you're like, if you're trying to do this and then if you're trying to lie, you're going to screw yourself up, because then you're going to show the inconsistency. That's why you want to be consistent. And usually at the end of it, you sit down with a psychologist and they'll sit down in a stern face. So Steve, tell me when the last time you were angry. This happened to me at one department. So last time you were angry, Steve? And I go, I can't tell you the last time I was angry. They're staring you down. Got to be sometime you were angry. And I'm like, God, I don't remember the last time I was angry. There has to be a time. And I made the stupid comment, and remember, the psychologist is not your friend, and I made the stupid comment a couple hours ago trying to answer some of these questions that I'm having to explain right now, and that was like, why did I just say that stupid thing? And of course, you can't expect that person to have a sense of humor, because that's not their job. I get it. I wouldn't probably if I was doing their tough work. And I'm like, uh-oh, that was not the good thing to say. And then she looks at me and she goes, that was not funny. So you think this is all funny in this process? Like, oh no. No, I don't. I apologize. That was a total mistake. I should have thought before I actually spoke. My apologies. I honestly can't think of last time I had a conflict. Oh, that's how we're going to end this right now. Okay, maybe 2 years ago, and you got to be consistent, but you also don't want them to get the best of you either, because then it may show cracks in your armor, as they say, because again, you don't want them to, are you hiding something? Are you lying about something? Are you covering about something? That's why usually if you're honest, the truth shall set you free. Yeah, the truth may also mean that you never get hired because of how honest you are, because of the crap you've done. I get that. But maybe it wasn't meant to be anyway. But again, I've also heard years ago, one of the best pieces of advice by a wise fire chief, Steve, you may get hired on the first test. It may take you 100 tests. It may take you 1,000,000 tests. But the key is, as long as you don't give up, there's a department out there. It may be locally. It may be within an hour. It may be next state over. It could be across the country. It may be out of the country. There's a department out there for everyone, as long as you don't give up and you stick with it and you be yourself, because eventually yourself will find that culture and that department that is right for you. It's strange and it's weird until you're on this side, but that's the key, is you can give up like many people do, or you can stick it out. Medical evaluation is pretty much just that, just a doctor usually, or nurse practitioner, or someone using the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association checklist that we use for our folks on the line of what's best practices of, are you fit for duty to become a firefighter? Again, this is not a physical ability test. It's just, hearing test, eye test, everything test, just to make sure you're okay. Recruit Academy I've touched on, but it could be as simple as get your butt on the rig, kid. There is no academy. Your first day is on the job after you pass the background, the psych, and everything else, if there even is that. Or it could be up to 24 weeks or longer. So most departments are very upfront about the whole process on their website. A Recruit Academy is just that. It's usually teaching you firefighter skills, EMS skills, teaching you everything from scratch, teaching you leadership skills, evaluating leadership skills. Reasons why recruits get terminated is pretty simple. After years of experience, it's no different. I mean, especially at the college level, I realize this. Usually it seems like, especially at the college level, it seems to be true around the country. Recruits sometimes get terminated because they can't pass the written test scores. Maybe it's the skills scores, because you're getting a lot of written tests. You're getting a lot of skills evaluations on hose, ladders, everything else. And again, remember, you're supposed to be the best of your best. You're at your peak right now in the academy and your probationary period. I mean, you're supposed to be. Sometimes recruits may get terminated because of attitude or behavioral issues. It's usually about it, and it may be, you may have rock star grades. You may be 90% on your written and skills test, but if you call the drill master or your academy instructor or one of your instructors an asshole because you got put under stress, that's never happened in my department, but I've heard of that happening in other departments where, because of the stress that you're under during the academy, which is a stressful situation, and then all of a sudden someone snaps at an instructor, bye-bye. Remember, you're like Kleenex, you're disposable as a probationary firefighter. It's sobering to think that way, but it's attitude, behavior, and another one, physical fitness. And again, just because you have the CPAT or pass the background doesn't mean you're going to be great character-wise. It just means you're good enough to hopefully take a chance on, or you're good enough physical fitness-wise. Best way to prepare for the Recruit Academy, in all honesty, besides having a physical fitness program, is to get your butt in a college academy. If you can find a college academy in your state, bonus if it's applicable in your state, but a lot of state academies are also good in other states. Just do your homework and research before you say, well, I'm going to go to California and then go apply for Oregon departments or Pennsylvania departments. Sometimes they're transferable, sometimes they aren't, just like EMS certifications. But to me, the best way is to go through a college academy or some type of firefighter academy, because I'd rather make my mistakes on the college ground. Because here's the nice part about the college: for the recruits of the college that we kick out of the college, they get an F for the semester, they can apply again next semester and they get in. It's not based on scores, it's based on college registration. So if you were able to register one semester and you get an F, and you come back the next semester and it's all, first come, first serve. We've seen many students at the college level that have failed out of 2 academies, then finally the 3rd time they got it right. Hey, I'd rather let that happen to you at the college level, because if you get fired by a recruit academy, meaning a department's academy, the city of Las Vegas hires you and then they release you for whatever reason, attitude, behavior, scores, whatever. Again, as I shared earlier, trying to get a second chance, number one, at that same department, let alone another department, because you can't hide it. You're going to have to be very upfront in your background investigation, because they're going to ask, hey, why'd you get fired from Las Vegas? Because they're going to call Las Vegas. They're going to want to hear your side of the story. They're going to get their side of the story, and they better match. So, I mean, again, it can happen where people get second chances, but again, having gone through a recruit academy at a college really prepares you, because most college academies are just as tough, sometimes tougher than actual fire department academies, depending on the academy. And plus, I think it's beneficial getting your 2-year degree in fire technology or fire science. Again, most departments don't require it, but you're going to learn more at the college. And I share this with my students at the college. In a college semester, you're getting like 53 to 60 hours of one subject. So 53 to 60 hours of fire behavior or building construction or safety or fire protection equipment and systems or wildland. Think about that, 50 to 60 hours. When you get hired on the job in their recruit academy, most departments are going to be giving you 1 to 10 hours of any of those subjects. I mean, most departments don't have that much time to spend as a college semester. So you may learn more at the college in your semester than you'll ever learn on the job. Strange as that may seem, but it's just the way it works. I think, again, it doesn't guarantee you a job, doesn't guarantee you're going to do well, but I think it helps set you up for success. It's like an athlete. Very few go from high school to the pros. Most successful pro athletes have done high school ball, college ball, maybe minor league ball if it's baseball, maybe some other type of developmental league before they get to the pros. Very few go high school right to the pros. That's like you going high school to the big leagues fire department. It can happen, but you got to have your act together. And how to succeed, all the things we've talked about: following instructions, being a good teammate, showing good character traits, passing. All in all, gone a little bit over. I appreciate those that were able to hang up over the 2 hours. Like I said, after I'll send out the link, hopefully tomorrow or so. For those that actually stuck with me right now, I'll share the link tomorrow, usually about 24 hours after. So if you don't get anything by tomorrow evening, shoot me an email, and I'll probably depending on how the video comes out, I'll hopefully post a webinar on my YouTube page along with the other ones as well too. So if you don't get a chance to watch it, and if somebody did sign up but they didn't actually attend right now, they'll have access as well too. I shared my books earlier. Again, I just think they're good resources off my websites, as well as iTunes or Amazon if you prefer the digital formats. I talked about the other books I'm working on right now, hopefully early next year if all goes well. And if you haven't figured out by now, I've got a passion for helping people get hired. You guys, hopefully, and gals, hopefully getting people stay hired, hoping to get people stay hired, meaning don't do stupid things. I have a passion for helping people, once you're on the job, get promoted, and also stay promoted by, again, being the best they can be. And then ultimately having a good career, giving back, paying it forward, leaving the place better than you found it, and having an awesome retirement. So really, for me, I think it sums up for this: above all, you're in control of your own destiny. And it comes down to, don't just prepare for the test. So many prepare for the test, prepare for the position. The test is the small goal. Yeah, you got to get through the test. The position is the job itself. And how do you prepare for the position? Go to a fire academy at a college, get your degree, or take some classes. And again, those aren't usually always required by most departments, but they're just helping set you up for the long-term success. Plus, if you ever want to become a captain or a chief officer, a lot of departments are requiring a 2-year degree or 4-year degree for captain and or chief. So if you don't have any college education, now's the time to get it, because once you get on the job and you've been on the job 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, You got family, you got friends, you got kids now, you got a life. 20 years on the job, most people don't want to go back. Oh, I want to be a captain or a chief, so I better get my 4-year degree now. I know online makes it easy, but that ain't fun at that point. So now's that time to focus on all those things. So my contact information, and I'm going to segue to Q&A here in a second. But I do want to obviously thank you for the gift of your time. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. I mean, like I said, I'm very fortunate to travel around the country, interact with people such as in situations like this. And I really enjoy helping people meet their career goals. I mean, thank God for technology as we can really interact in a lot of ways. I put my pants on the same way everyone else does. Don't think just because I'm a chief that, oh, I can't call you up, you're a chief. Okay, you can call me chief, you can call me Steve. Please don't call me Mr. Prisbrowski. That was my dad, God rest his soul, but I don't feel that old, but I'm good with whatever. But as long as you're respectful, I'm respectful in whatever else you do, but feel free to reach out. I mean, and that's why my last webinar, I talked about building relationships and maintaining relationships, because this is what it's about. It's not sucking up or kissing butt, but building relationships, because, you know, your interaction with me may help you go down this rabbit hole. Maybe someone else you come in contact with over here now gets you this over here. And again, that's how you usually find out about things. You become better at things. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to connect on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever else. And if you aren't on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, I encourage you to at least check those out. If you are on them, I encourage you to be professional, because in backgrounds, they will check those things out. And I've heard of more and more background investigators sharing stories of, hey, Steve, would you please tell with your students, tell them that even if their account's private, or even if they've deleted it, they've never truly deleted it. So make sure you go through and do a social media footprint, or whatever they call it, by Googling your name, seeing all the things that come out. Now may be the time to clean up your act. Well, that was 10 years ago when I was in high school. Yeah, I know, but that can come back to haunt you. So again, I think they're valuable tools. So with that, if you want to go right now, I do thank you for the gift of your time. I'm really having a blast doing these webinars. I look forward to the next ones next Saturday, June 6th, as well as the other one on June 20th. Hopefully you can join me for those as well too. If anyone wants to stick around for Q&A, I'm more than happy to try to answer some questions on the chat, or if we have to go online, that'd be offline. We do that too. If you found this valuable, please feel free to share some of that on the chat, or email me afterward. I mean, I don't expect that. If there's some lessons learned for how to do it better, please let me know. I'm all ears. Seriously, that's how I get better, is learning from feedback. So please help me help you, and see if there's other future webinars you'd like, let me know, because maybe there's other things you'd like to know more about. So from Matt here to all panelists, this is something that came up in the chat a little while ago. As a fire career professional, recently moved to from Oklahoma to Nevada for my spouse's career, which happens. And now you're starting over for the most part, which again happens. What recommendations do you have for individuals like me looking for middle-level management position in fire emergency management? I have a master's degree in fire admin, which is good, but not enough experience to be a chief in most cases. And that's a problem that a lot of people have, because if you're looking for out of state, for example, in any rank, this is the hard part. A firefighter, for example, it's easy. If you're a firefighter in one department, you can go anywhere in the United States. Well, the problem is it's not easy, because you could work for San Francisco for 10 years, then, hey, New York, I just spent 10 years in San Francisco, I want to be a FDNY firefighter now. Well, I hate to say it, but in many departments, hey, cool, thank you. Apply on the next testing cycle, pass the written test, pass the physical ability, do well in your oral interview, pass your background. We'll send you to the recruit academy with all 300 other people that you're getting hired with, most with no experience, some with more experience. But yeah, don't tell them that, you know, hey, I'm a know-it-all, because they don't want to hear that. And then if you pass your probationary period, you're a boot firefighter, a rookie like everybody else that has to earn their stripes. That's why as a recruit, it's tough to move out of state if you have more than a couple of years on the job. It's one thing if you only have a year or two on the job, but it's tough when you have to, you know, you get some footing in a career, and then you move out of state because you probably got to start like a brand new recruit elsewhere. But I've also known some people that have gotten promotional positions or higher up positions. If you're a fire chief, for example, or going for a fire chief position, it's easy to bounce from state to state. But in this position here, where a lot of people do move from state to state because of maybe family needs, maybe your spouse, significant other has a great opportunity. Well, for you as a firefighter, do you want to start out as an entry-level firefighter? Maybe you get the chance, maybe you don't. But besides having a college degree, which is obviously beneficial, you know, experience can be a challenge if you don't have experience. That's why a recommendation maybe is to, if you want to work for a certain area around your new area, maybe try to find some volunteer opportunities. maybe try to find some unpaid internship opportunities, as painful as they may be. And it may be finding a job in non-fire, but then trying to get your fingers in the mix of getting, trying to find a way to build networks and relationships. Because here's the thing, firefighters usually get a lot of applicants, but for a lot of the non-firefighter positions, like fire chief or even civilian positions that are like mid-management, or not civilian positions, but captains, there's not as many applications. So if you have a good resume and maybe you're willing to show some volunteer experience, internship experience, or find a relationship, maybe you get pointed in the right direction. Obviously some stuff like LinkedIn can be very helpful as well too. So I'd be happy to talk more offline on that. Otherwise, if you want to reach out to me, Matt, later on, probably easier on a phone conversation. But the key is, if you are looking at moving, try to do your homework and realize it's not as easy sometimes as it sounds. Any other Q&A while we're here? So we've got a few people left on board here, but I'll give it about 5 seconds or so. And if not, I'll stop the recording here in a few and then send everything out tomorrow. And again, thank you. I appreciate your time as well too. It's nice to see the feedback. Again, it's fun for me doing these things because I learn things every time I do them too. And hopefully at least they're beneficial in some capacity. If you gain one thing out of this, I'm happy. So, well, I think we'll cut it off right there. Again, thank you, everybody. Have a great, safe day. Take care, and hopefully our paths will cross again at some point in the future. And again, here's my contact information. Please reach out. I'm a resource. Good luck with your career endeavors. Take care, everybody.